Is everyone
I
going to
like
be
recording
using
these. Good
the
morning,
Jackknife?
Janine. Thank you so much for being here. Who we have here today with us is Josh, who is a fairly fresh student into scuba, and just starting into the courses. Has only taken a few, but has the plan of moving forward to becoming a dive master, and eventually an assistant instructor. And very eager and willing student, and a pleasure to be a part of our group. So this is a great opportunity for training for him. Dave Wilson, I certified him open water last year, and he has moved very quickly and very diligently through the process to get to dive guide and dive master, and is very excited to move into the assistant instructor. So this will be opportunities for them to get criticism and guiding points from in a different realm than what they've currently gotten. They've seen this my criteria evaluation before. I'm not sure if you have, Josh. Have you seen the criteria? Okay, cool. And they've gotten pointers and guides from that. So they've had the opportunity to see this. David's seen it more than once. David's seen this numerous times overall through the process. So he should be pretty aware of this. But I figured we'd take a few moments to just kind of go through it really quickly, make sure that they understood it again, and so that you can see how I explain it to them as well, if that'd be okay with you, Janine.
Yes, most definitely.
Janine, you're back on mute.
No, I can
Okay,
hear.
I'll go ahead and figure out how to share my screen.
I think it's off.
Let's see. I'm assuming backup is Donnie. So we'll see
No,
how it works.
backup is
Guys,
David.
to kind of reiterate, this is our evaluating rubric. You've all seen this before. Overall, I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit on it. The only difference between the one you guys have and the one I have is mine has a cheat sheet on it that says section 1, section 2, section 3. I still can't hear you, Janine. I'm so sorry.
I don't know what's up.
If you hit it with a hammer, it makes it work better. I'm just kidding. Um,
Yeah,
but overall, as we look at this, the first thing we're always looking for, as we've talked about numerous times in section 1, is define the objective and measurable terms. I'm going to be able to do whatever in whatever. And at the end of this, you'll be able to accomplish this. If we're talking about driving a car with a manual transmission, at the end of this, you'll be able to push the clutch in and change from first gear to second gear. And then in future tense, you're going to be able to handle that. Explain the values of the topics. You'll want to know how to shift gears from first gear to second gear, because that'll allow you to go more quickly and people won't give you the bird as often. Um, Come on, that was a little funny. Provide a main overview of topics outlined. The first one's going to be we're going to learn how to first put the clutch in, second, pull the transmission from first to second, point outlined, right? We'll be judging you obviously in section 2 of knowledge. You understand the subject. Equipment safety counseling and motivate to purchase. Why would I want to have racing shoes if I'm or shoes on or whatever, something that could purchase to be able to shift the car from first to second, and then promote continuing education. As you go through this process, we want you to talk about Con Ed, of how we move from where we're at to become gaining more knowledge in whatever we're doing. So in the driving situation, maybe we talk about advanced driving or advanced stopping or whatever it is. So I want you guys to think about that. Always a safe, accurate message in the topic. We definitely want to, avoid the subject of death. That's probably a good one to avoid. You will die doing this, but make sure we're talking safe and accurate information on the topic, that we're doing it safely, and we're not scaring the students. David, my favorite things to do with students is to say, hey, by the way, guys, David, can you say something just to make sure you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, there we go. I just want to make sure my speakers were working. But anyway, it was so quiet. Safe information on the topic. You and I both know that when we get to section 3 of open water, that I always make sure that the students know that they're going to be safe. That I'm going to turn the air back on. Whatever that is, make sure we're safe and we use accurate information. We're not talking about buddy breathing like we jokingly do in React Right, to give them the idea that buddy breathing is not a good thing, or not react right, but stress and rescue. Complete the information in accurate logical sequence, going back to standard transmission. Josh, you're probably too young to know what a standard transmission is, but um, overall, but
I know how to drive a standard.
I know I'm just giving you a hard time. I just like giving you a
If
hard
only
time.
you could get it out of the garage.
There you go. So complete information in a logical sequence. We push the clutch in and then we shift, right? And then deliver the environmental safe practice message. Certainly don't crash into the state troopers or into the railing of the thing. Whatever that is, safely. Effective use of training aids. Make sure you're using at least 2. An easy secret is PowerPoint, and make sure ask people to open up their My SSI app. There's 2 easy ones right there. When we're in the classroom, you guys know we use the PC, we use the regular set. I'm big about pulling things out and letting people touch, feel, and I hope they don't taste the gear, but if they want to lick the regulator, they can. Motivate the class to participate in the process, so ask lots of questions. I like to ask 3 specific types of questions throughout the process. The first one is a direct question to make sure that they're paying attention. Josh, can you hear me? Have you driven a standard, right? Direct questions to make sure that they're participating and understanding. Another type of question I like to ask is knowledge questions, making sure they've understood the information directly. And along those lines, I also like to ask questions that make them think. Why do you think we need to push the clutch in first? And then get them thinking and dialing that in first. And then finally, just general questions. Any other questions, So we're asking the 3 questions, thinking questions, knowledge questions, and general questions. So I like to ask lots of questions through that process. And then another 9 points is if you took those 3 slides at the beginning here in section 1 and you change the tense for section 5, you've got section 5. You just restate what you just talked about. You restate the objective and restate the value. And then finally, we grade you on accomplished objectives. We were going to do 3 things. We were going to teach you how to push the clutch in. We teach you how to shift from first to second gear, and we were going to teach you how to shift from third gear or second gear to first gear. Did we go through those 3 things? Other than that, mannerism, impression, speaking abilities, making sure you're not scared, you're not hiding under the desk. Oh my God, no! And then effective use of time. You all have 10 to 15 minutes. Is that pretty clear, guys?
Yes.
Awesome. Oh, I can hear Janine too. That is even better. Let's see. We'll just stop the share screen. David, would you like to go first? We've lost David.
No, I'm just out grabbing something out of my trailer quick.
Not a word. Do you have anything you want to add now that we can actually hear you?
Nope. This is your class. So I am just here to help you, to be your assistant.
Cool. Right on. Well, perfect. We'll have David go first. I'm not sure who's on backup. So I've got.
I'm on backup.
Oh, are you okay? So I did not hear
come
back
off while I'm presenting and make sure that you guys are seeing what I want you to see.
Awesome. All right. I haven't heard from Donnie, which is not terribly surprising. I like Donnie, but
If that was the first time he hadn't shown up, I'd be worried. But
yeah, exactly. I like Donnie a lot. Good kid. He's our perpetual late.
once he got out of the Marines, he decided he didn't want to be structured anymore.
That's what I'm guessing. And I was very excited because I gave him a React Right course section.
Oh,
So
that would have been fun.
he teaches those really well. I've learned a lot from him on medical maladies. So, all right, David, time is 6:10. So whenever you want to start.
All right. So
Do you mind telling us the topic and the program that it's in real quick?
absolutely. So I was given 2 different programs. I was given Try Scuba, and we're going to talk about the effects of pressure on both on the surface and underwater, the primary effects of pressure on descent, and equalization techniques from that. And I was also given Perfect Buoyancy, and we are going to talk about why perfect buoyancy is the best method of protecting the environment, describe the various fin kicks used to protect the environment, and identify additional programs and activities for environmentally conscious divers. So Let me remember how I do this here. All right, so we will start with Sure Scuba, go from basic to complicated, and hopefully perfect. Okay, so try Scuba. My name is David Wilson. We're going to talk about introductions to scuba today. Today we will learn the effects of pressure both on the surface and underwater, the primary effects of pressure on descent, and equalization techniques. If there are any questions throughout the course, please don't feel free to speak up. But hopefully this will be a pretty comprehensive learning experience for you. Value of the topics. Learning the difference in effects of pressure on surface and underwater allows for safe handling of those differences. Obviously, this is an alien environment. It's not something that humans are naturally adapted to, but we will teach you how to adapt to these environments so that you can have a safe and enjoyable experience under the water today. Learning the primary effects of pressure on descent allows you to recognize the signs and symptoms you may experience if there are any difficulties adjusting to the underwater environment. And learning equalization techniques allows you to safely cope with and manage these signs and symptoms that you may recognize both in yourself and others today. Overview, the effects of pressure on the surface and underwater. We're going to talk about the weight of air, the weight of water, and the weight of salt water, which are all different. We'll also talk about the primary effects of pressure on descent on the ears, sinuses, and lungs, which are the major air spaces in your body. Because as you may know from science class, fluids can't compress, but air definitely can. We'll also talk about equalization techniques. The three most basic, just swallowing, rotating the jaw, and the Valsalva technique, which are the easiest and simplest methods to equalize the pressure spaces in your body. The effects of pressure on the air. Everybody has air pressure, and it's just part of being on the surface of the earth. Air weighs about 0.08 pounds per cubic feet, which is not a lot. That's a very insignificant amount until you factor in the fact that we've got, 80,000 feet of air above us. And then that adds up to 14.7 pounds per square inch on your body. But being as humans adapt pretty well to things, we don't really experience that, or at least notice that experience on the day-to-day basis. If we have a dramatic shift in that, we might notice that, such as if you've ever flown on an airplane. And if you have a dramatic increase or a dramatic decrease in altitude, such as takeoff or landing, you might have felt that your ears pop. Have you ever experienced that before? And so with water, it gets dramatically heavier. Fresh water, 62.5 pounds per cubic feet, which is a considerable amount. And salt water goes up to 64 pounds per cubic feet, which is being just a little bit heavier than fresh water itself. And we sit here and we're like, 60 pounds, that's not too bad. Until you factor in that salt water is 800 times heavier than the air that we are in currently. So that adds up quite a lot. 32 feet of water weighs the equivalent to the entire atmosphere currently above you. And every 33 feet that you go down in the water adds an additional atmosphere of pressure on your body. As we talked about before, it doesn't really affect the fluid parts of your body so much as it does the air spaces in your body. Do you have the SSI app available to you?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
So in the app, I wasn't able to pull the pictures from the app to get in there, but in the Try Scuba section, if you want to open that up, The third section is, the fourth section has a couple of pictures here that you can use to follow along under squeeze, primary effects, and pressure on descent. But your ears have a fairly complicated system set up between the eustachian tube and everything. And within your ear, you'll have all of these things on the inside and the outside of it, separated by a tympanic membrane, which is commonly referred to as simply the eardrum. And that membrane allows the pressure outside to vibrate with the pressure inside while keeping those air spaces separate so they're not risking contamination of the interior ear. And that vibration is what allows you to actually be able to hear. Along with that, you have your sinuses. Most people just say the sinuses, but there's actually 4 sets. If you scroll down a little bit in the app, you'll see the picture there of the sinus spaces in red. And the sinuses are not able to equalize. Pressure on your ear, I'm sure you've felt that driving over mountains or flying in an airplane, as you said you've done. But most people don't get to experience sinus pressure too often unless you have a cold or something like that. And that sinus pressure can start as just a dull headache, but with the pressures involved in scuba diving, you'll actually feel a fairly sharp wedging pain just above and behind your eyes. And if you feel that pressure, the best thing to do is ascend immediately. You can try to descend more gradually at that point, but probably if you have sinus congestion, you will not be able to get your sinuses to equalize. If your ears are having trouble equalizing, the best part about a good scuba mask is it has a nose well, and having that nose well will allow you to pinch your nose and equalize using a technique we'll talk about a little later called the Valsalva technique. But with the sinuses, that's not particularly an option. Excuse me. Sorry, apparently my scroll wheel will also change my slides. And then the other big portion of air in your body is obviously your lungs. Your lungs have the job of moving air in and out of your body, and so they are a huge airspace. Fortunately for scuba, they don't do a whole lot. For snorkeling or freediving, however, you can definitely run into issues with equalization. Easiest way to prevent this is when you're snorkeling or freediving, take a big breath in if you're going to be changing depths in the water. Fill your lungs completely, and then hold that air the entire time you're underwater. Excuse me. The lung squeeze can be prevented while you're scuba diving by simply breathing. So scuba divers don't have any effect on lung squeeze because number one rule of scuba is always breathe. Equalization techniques for equalizing, start with the most basic thing. The easiest way to get your ears to equalize is just simply swallowing. When you're flying on a plane, a lot of times you'll see the travel gurus recommend chewing gum or something like that, because working your jaw will also help to equalize. And so we'll go ahead and we'll do a little equalization here. And all you're going to do is you can take the tongue, press it on the roof of your mouth, and swallow hard. And hopefully you'll feel just a little bit of pressure there in your ears as they shift. Did you guys feel that there? Some people do, some people don't. Hopefully you do. Next thing you can do is rotate your jaw and give a little jaw jut and kind of a fake yawn to pressurize the back of your throat there. A lot of people can get it that way. And, oh my goodness, that habit of scrolling there. There it is. And then finally, the final technique is the Valsalva technique. Again, that's why a good scuba mask is important. Any masks sold at our local shop will all be scuba certified masks, meaning they'll all have the nose pocket and the tempered glass. You can get different masks from different companies, but always make sure that they're a good certified scuba shop to make sure that you're getting a good scuba safe mask. And so you'll just reach through the nose well there, pinch your nose, and then just breathe out as if you were trying to breathe out through your nose. And you should feel almost immediately on the surface a pressure in your ears there. The deeper you are in the water, the longer you'll have to hold that, up to 15, 20 seconds. And if you're still having difficulty, whichever ear is having difficulty, just go ahead and raise that ear up, and that will help stretch that eustachian tube and allow that pressure a little bit easier job to clear. So a couple of quiz questions here for you guys to make sure you were paying attention. When should you guys start to equalize?
On the surface.
On the surface. So we got four answers here. It'll be one of these answers here.
When you feel pressure in your ears. All of them.
So yes, any of them, you should definitely be working on equalizing. Immediately upon descent is the most correct answer out of these, though, however, because if you start equalizing as fast as you can, then you'll have less to equalize at a time. We talked about the dramatic shift in pressure when you're flying in an airplane on that takeoff. It's a little uncomfortable. However, if you were equalizing the entire time, then it makes it a lot more comfortable for us. If you feel pressure in your ears, you should absolutely work to equalize. However, if you feel pressure above and behind your eyes, that's going to likely be a presentation of sinus squeeze, which cannot be cleared with equalization techniques. And so at that point, the only thing you can do is come up a little bit until that pressure goes away. Try to descend a little slower. If you still can't get that pressure to go away behind your eyes, we're going to probably call the dive for that day. Because the best way to avoid sinus squeeze, and I forgot to talk about this one, is simply never diving with a cold. If you dive with a cold, your sinuses are all clogged up. There is simply nothing we can do to equalize that. There's no way to force pressure into our sinuses except for to overpressure them. And at that point, the equalization usually comes with blood and tissue moving around. You end up with a bloody nose, that kind of thing. So that's a fairly minor thing to get a nosebleed. Some people deal with them quite frequently, such as myself. However, we'd rather go into the water in the same condition that we came out of the water. So today we learned the effects of pressure both on the surface and underwater, the primary effects of pressure on descent and equalization techniques, which allows you to provide safe handling of the differences between pressure on the surface and pressure underwater, allows you to recognize the signs and symptoms you may experience in the water, and allows you to safely cope with and manage the signs and symptoms you may recognize both in yourself and others. We covered the weight of air, water, and salt water. Who can tell me the weight of fresh water and the weight of salt water there? Anybody remember?
Freshwater was 62.5 and saltwater was 64.
Very good. Not that you'll need that on a regular day-to-day basis in your life, but it is a very interesting technique. If you decide to that those numbers interest you and you want to learn more about that, there is a science of diving class. We have an instructor here at the shop who's very excellent at teaching that, loves science, loves to get into the numbers. So if you feel you want to learn more about that, go ahead and get with the shop and talk about taking science of diving with Ben. Excuse me. We also learned about the primary effects of pressure on descent, the ears, sinuses, and lungs. These are the air spaces in our body because, as we know, fluid cannot compress, but air spaces absolutely can. And we also learned about equalization techniques. We talked about swallowing, rotating the jaw, which are both self-explanatory because their names say what you're doing, and the Valsalva technique. Who can tell me what the Valsalva technique was? Josh, do you remember how that worked?
Yeah, so you pinch your nose and you breathe out for a few seconds until your ears equalize.
Yep. Breathe out against that plugged nose, and that will help pressurize the inner ear to equalize the pressure with the tympanic membrane. And so that is the tri-scuba part of the presentation today. And are there any questions? No questions? All right.
Will you do me a huge favor and put your objectives back up on the screen? It's your
Yeah.
first slide. Thank you.
Give me just one moment here because it's arguing with me and wants to pull that presentation off. Share screen. You wanted the objectives?
Yes. Thank you.
Coda. And if you guys are okay, I'll have Josh take this next presentation before I do the perfect buoyancy because my dog just escaped her enclosure. So I got to go get my dogs back. Did I lose you guys? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my dog just escaped the yard. I got to go recover her really quick and get her back in her enclosure.
Perfect. We'll continue grading here for a minute. And
okay.
Hey, Joshua, what program are you going to be teaching us about, and what's your topic?
It's the scuba program, or sorry, it's the snorkeling program. The section 2, seeing underwater.
Thank you.
I think I've got him graded. A couple of things I wanted to look through real quick. Let's see. Section 3. All right. Okay. If you want to proceed up to, let's see, let me remove that. There we go. Perfect. All right. I kind of wanted to evaluate David before Josh got on, so he'd have a little bit better understanding of what we're thinking and looking at, because there were definitely some key points that needed to be addressed as we're going through this. But I think David did a good job and worked very hard on this. So, Josh, do you want to just proceed forward?
Sure.
And without the benefit of, or would you like to hear a few of my points on David's, just to give an idea what you might be able to avoid?
Sure. Yeah, that might be great.
The first thing for me was to remember the audience. Remember, we're doing a try scuba program here, and I think you've come out and assisted on some try scubas programs to this point, but typically these are people who are just thinking about getting into scuba diving. They haven't gotten to that point of understanding what scuba diving really is, and they're not even sure. And a lot of times, it's we use the Try Scuba program as an introductory program for high schoolers as a PE credit. So they're generally very, very novice. They're many times it's the first time they put a mask on, and so as we make these presentations in a Try Scuba specifically, we need to remember the audience, that we're dealing with a much younger audience in an acquisition program. And what I mean by an acquisition program is this is somebody that's thinking about it, but they're not sure where they want to go. So we're utilizing this as an opportunity to move them from point A to point B of try scuba to maybe a scuba diver, or into even an open water program that you've definitely have an opportunity to see. So this is the people, the kids that are or adults that are thinking about it but haven't had the not, I don't want to say guts yet. That's not really the word I'm looking for, but they haven't had they're not quite ready to move into an open water program. This is they're riding go-karts at Disneyland before they go out and take a driver's ed course kind of deal, right? And you've kind of seen this, the kids that the guys or the people that come through scuba, how knowledgeable are they on day one of open waters class? How confident are they and knowledgeable?
Yeah, I mean, they're not really.
Exactly. So we definitely try and keep what have you noticed when from the terminology and how we talk to them on day one of open water to when we get to day 4?
Yeah, I mean, on day one, it's a lot simpler, and we're just kind of talking about how to safely do scuba and get in the pool and be able to do things. And then at the end, it's kind of like, okay, these are the things you need to do, and here's a bit more technical stuff.
Exactly. Just day one, we just want to see them sink and blow bubbles, right? On pool 4, we want to see them hover and take a mask off. So it's definitely a very different from day 1 to day 2 or day 4. So same thing with this. This is pre day 1. So that's one of the things I want you to remember as you're presenting these programs. Remember who you were actually talking to, and so you have to speak to that level. If we're dealing with a bunch of 4th graders. For example, Monday night, we're going to be doing a try scuba for Owen, my grandson, who's 8 years old. So we're going to go through that. Section 2, part 2 was more direct questions as we go through this, especially knowing the audience that I like to think of try scuba as all 4th graders, right? And I don't know if you've done a lot of teaching of 4th graders, but I've taught young men's and young women's and having my grandson here for the last week, the attention span's a lot lower. And so making sure we're asked direct questions. Have you worked with children at that age group?
I mean, not really, not teaching them at least.
But you get an idea. You work with kids at least at some point,
Yeah.
and seeing that they better have enough attention span to remember to put the gum in their mouth.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So we have to kind of keep that in mind as we go through that process of asking direct questions and then trying to get them to use those thinking questions. The next thing we got to do is we have to use real world examples. Notice in the first question I asked you about real world examples of open water scuba day 1 versus open water day scuba day 4. It made you think. You could see that as we use real world examples. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
So make sure we're using, real world, talking about getting your car out of the driveway. Remember last time you had to pull your car out of the driveway? Utilize visual questions that get your students thinking as well. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're utilizing equipment sales at some point as well. Now, Josh, in terms of equipment sales, what do you think we might talk about with a try scuba?
I mean, with a try scuba, it's probably just going to be a mask, snorkel, and fins.
Exactly. Exactly. Why wouldn't you want to try and sell them a new Perdix dive computer?
Yeah, I mean, well, as far as a dive computer goes, I mean that's a bit out there for a try scuba, but I mean, unless they were really serious about taking the the open water course, it's kind of hard to recommend expensive scuba gear that they might not use if they just want to do try scuba or just discovery dives or whatever.
Exactly. They wouldn't understand what that is. That's a pretty fancy watch you're wearing, right? They don't get the idea that it does a lot of other cool things that are pretty amazing. So we remember our audience. And then Con Ed, what do you think the best continuing education for a try scuba might be?
Yeah, I mean, probably the open water course.
Exactly. So again, remember your audience. It's definitely going to be, and we'll just reiterate that first point now that David has rejoined us. I think you heard from points 2 on. David, you got to, as we do these courses, remember the audience that we're teaching. In a try scuba, those are the high schoolers that we do the most. They're coming out and they haven't even got into open water. So the example I like to use is how do we talk to our students on open water day 1 versus what do we talk about on open water day 4?
Right.
So remember that terminology of the things we use. On day 1, we're saying things like float and sink, and we're getting their minds moving on that. And on day 4, we're talking about dive table, NDL, and so the dynamic of that is that we need to make sure we talk to the students that we're talking to based upon their experience level and their emotional and their motor development. I mean, you've taught young men and the deacons in church. Teaching a class to the deacons is very different than teaching a class to the high priests, right? And while they both fall asleep at the same time, just kidding. There's a joke. I don't know if you remember the old joke. We're going to start ordaining all the babies in church to high priests, so they all fall asleep through their sacrament. But Janine, in the LDS church, we used to have a level called the high priest, and it was generally the 50-year-olds and older in church. And so the joke was we're going to start ordaining all the babies in church to high priest, to that quorum, so they'd all sleep through sacrament. So, but that was all. That's the thing, is we got to make sure we teach to the level of person we're teaching to. So those are the kind of key points that I had. Josh, if you're ready, I'm to present yours. I need your subject, if you wouldn't mind terribly.
Yeah, it's just the seeing underwater.
Seeing underwater. Whenever you're ready. Okay, let me hold that.
All right, yeah. So my topic is seeing underwater from the snorkeling course. Our main objectives today are going to be viewing the underwater environment, the effects of light refraction in water, under the underwater illumination, water's effect on light, as well as color, specifically the absorption of color. And then we're going to talk about turbidity a little bit, which is basically particles being suspended in water. Kind of the importance of these things is we're obviously snorkeling because we want to see wildlife, see fish, see reefs, and this will kind of help us better understand why their colors change the deeper we're viewing. And then it's also going to help us better understand just the world, the underwater world around us, and how different things affect us as well as the things in it. And then it's also going to let you know basically how to plan your trips a bit better, so that you can get some better viewing as far as weather and time of day and stuff. The main points are going to be there's a lot to see underwater, so they can overload your senses. Objects will appear larger. We're going to learn about refraction and how it bends light rays. And then we're going to talk about how refraction is more noticeable in shallower depths. We're going to talk about the light entering the water, illumination, and its effects on vision. We're going to talk about illumination is greatest when the sun is directly overhead. And then we're going to talk about how you can see a bit better when the water's surface is calm. And then we'll go into changing colors and talk about how it's harder to see if the bottom's disturbed and if there's particles in the water, as well as how the water acts like a filter for colors and actually absorbs and diminishes light intensity as you go through the spectrums. So seeing underwater, the underwater environment can obviously overload our senses. I mean, there's a lot to see. There's a lot of brightly colored marine life, lots of long coral reefs, and lots of organisms. What have you guys seen underwater that you find interesting, or what are some things that you hope to see underwater that you find interesting?
Lots of colorful fish.
Yeah. Telling you from experience, the fish are probably the best part of it. Just watching them interact with each other, interacting with the reefs, interacting with their environment. And there's a lot of vibrant colors and a lot of things that you can't see anywhere else other than underwater. So yeah, I mean, there's just so much to see. I mean, there's coral reef systems that are measured in hundreds of feet. There's so many different colors, like vibrant colors and shapes that you don't really see on land. And some of the cool stuff is, I mean, if you really focus, there's tiny animals just hidden in there that you can find, or you can go and see large fish and turtles. And kind of, I mean, sky's the limit as far as what you want to see. But with that being said, we do need to be mindful that that while the water and marine life are beautiful, we're visitors there, and we need to be careful not to touch or damage any of the stuff, any of the animals or reefs in the environment. But some ways that we can kind of overcome the overload is just to kind of a couple ways are just to let go and just enjoy kind of the movement of the water as it moves in and out, and it'll kind of rock you to sleep a bit. But you can just go with the water and look at the changing colors, look at the fish, look at a lot of the stuff. Another way is if you really want to see some of those small organisms or some of like the actual way that they interact with each other, you can kind of stay in one area, in a small area, and then just look for patterns. Look for patterns and just look in some of the places and try to find some of those smaller fish or some of those small crabs and things of that sort. And it really gives you, I mean, this picture on the bottom right is from Roatan. You can just see there's just so much reef and so much coral and everything to see down there. So like just focusing on a small section of it will bring you a lot of enjoyment too, as well as just kind of experiencing the whole thing. So then getting to refraction. Does anyone know what refraction is from maybe school? No, that's fine. So basically, refraction is what happens is light rays basically bend as they go through different mediums. In this case, we're talking about going from the air to the water, or from the water to the air in your mask. And so kind of an easy way to see that is I just have a glass of water here. And I don't know how well you can see this, but if I stick my finger in there, you can see that it comes in a bit of a different direction, and then it's also a lot bigger than the water on the surface. So that's the same effect that you're going to see underwater. Is the fish are going to be a lot bigger, the reefs are going to be a lot bigger, you're going to be a lot bigger, and so things can basically see or seem up to 33% bigger when you're underwater. And then refraction is most noticeable at the surface. And that's because as the light is entering the water, as you can see from this diagram in the bottom left, basically the light rays are turned. So when you're turning, the outside of the ray has to go further than the inside. So just keeping it simple, that's basically what the effect is of refraction. And then this image, you can kind of see the same kind of thing as the glass, where the cube in the water is a lot bigger than the cube on the surface. And then underwater illumination. Basically, you basically want as much natural light as possible. So it's the amount of light entering the water. And so it basically affects vision, because the less light, the harder it's gonna be to see things. And the further depths that you're looking to, if the reef's a lot deeper than in one section than the other, then you're going to obviously want a lot more light, because the light will dissipate more at those deeper viewing depths. So basically, when to have the best illumination, you want direct sun overhead, and you want a calm surface water. So the light just isn't coming through the waves and being redirected a bunch of ways in the waves. But basically, if you guys were planning a snorkeling trip, what weather and time might you look for based on these?
Like noon and really calm seas.
Yeah, on hopefully a cloudless day.
Yes.
So if you were planning a trip to somewhere and you kind of had control over when and where you went, those are the things you really want to look for: is a cloudless day, calm seas with direct overhead sun. So if you want to enjoy your snorkeling a lot more, I can tell you from experience that there's nothing worse than going on a trip and being given rental gear that doesn't really work. The last thing you really want to do when you're trying to just enjoy the water and enjoy the marine life is worry about a fin coming off and someone having to go down and get it, or dealing with a mask that won't seal right and it just kind of floods your face with water. And so you just want to enjoy the marine life. So definitely having your own gear can help you not only select the gear that works best for you, but also know that like you're not going to have ill-fitting fins and that you're going to have a mask that's going to hopefully seal. And if you are interested in getting any of your own equipment, the shop can for sure educate you on the different types of fins and snorkels and find things that will best fit for you. So then moving on to turbidity, it's basically where particles are suspended in the water. Like you can see from this image in Roatan, again, you can see all of you can see the sun rays coming in and you can see the little particles suspended in the water. So these particles can be a lot of things. They can be sand particles, they can be plant, they can be animal. And basically what they do is they reduce your visibility. So your visibility is obviously diminished in shallower water, especially when the sand is stirred up, because you're basically kicking the sand into the water and that's blocking more light from getting in there. So that's why it's so important that we're careful with our environment. And aside from damaging things, we don't want to disturb the water and disturb the bottom of the water so that we can continue to have good viewing experiences. So it's just very important that we avoid contact with the bottom at all times, just for our safety and for the best experience. So then moving on to changing colors. Basically, the water acts like a filter that decreases colors, how vibrant it is, as well as the colors we can see with depth. As you can see from this chart on the left, as we go deeper, or in this case, as we're viewing things deeper, things are going to lose color. So we're going to lose reds first, and then we're going to go to oranges and yellows, and then all the way until we just have purple left. I really like this video of basically he takes... So as you can see, when he went underwater, these appear bigger, but basically this just kind of shows the absorption of color as we go deeper. But you see here at about 60 feet, we've lost almost everything, but some of the greens and the purples and blues. So then down here, like as you can see, they're very vibrant at the surface in the top image, and then they're just kind of dull at the bottom, and you've lost a lot of your colors. As you can see from the second one in on the right, your red it looks like a purple. So this is very important because it kind of shows us the way that animals look. So basically, like as you can see, these are two pictures I took of a starfish. One has a flash and one doesn't. So the one on the left is just a picture with the natural light. And as you can see, it looks a lot more yellow and a lot more dull. And then when you have a flash, it lights it up and you can really see those oranges and the contrast. And it really makes viewing a lot better. So if you're interested in continuing on these, some of the courses I'd recommend is Obviously, try scuba, or if you kind of know you want to get certified already, just go to open water, or potentially free diving if you're looking at getting a little bit closer but don't really want to take the leap into scuba. As well as if you want to learn how to take better photos of marine life and things, there's also a photo and video course. So basically, what we should have learned today is how to view the underwater environment better, the refraction of light and water, how to get better illumination, water's effect on light, and then the effects of color, or water's effects on color, and then turbidity. And then again, the importance is we want to see marine life better. We want to know how to understand our world a bit better. And we want to obviously plan our trips for the best viewing. And then these are just basically the main points. Is the underwater environment can be a bit overloading to our senses. So just calm down and just enjoy your trip, whether you're just enjoying the water and the things passing you, or if you want to focus and kind of see the more detailed things. And then things in water are going to appear 33% bigger, and that's due to refraction, which is light rays passing through the water. That's obviously more noticeable at the surface. And then just how to illuminate things, as well as keeping the water clear, or trying to go when there's less particles in the water, and then also the effects of color, or the effects of water with color. So that's it. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. You're muted, Benjamin, if you're trying to talk.
Thank you for that. I says, Josh, thank you. That was fantastic. You did a great job, and you followed and I think it's easier to teach and start training you to do these presentations at this level versus later on in the process. And so it's why I introduced these the rubric so early into the training session, so that you've seen it, you're familiar with it, and it starts becoming the second nature on how you do it. And you did a great job. I was very impressed. One of the things, a couple things I might think about, again, talking to the audience, I would thin down my main points a little bit. I thought they were a little bit deep in terms of how much you had up there. So it almost becomes kind of a death by PowerPoint at that point. So I would thin those down. The other key piece is direct questions. I always go back to the idea of, you and I both know I give Aaron a hard time about his dry suit emergency he had on an XR course. Are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You really need to get in, Josh. Are you okay? You've got to be very directed in your questions of that. I did an interview with Jill Heinrich one time, and she says, it's very different taking boys out on a boat versus girls on a boat. Now, the girls will always communicate the issues and talk about things. Guys, everybody okay? Yeah, I'm fine. And so she's gotten to the point, and you and I both know that I ask direct questions. Josh, how are you feeling on this? David, what do you think about that? And so be very directive of bringing the person in with a direct question to that person. Janine, what did you think about this? And so using their names, personalizing it to the audience. So directed individual questions would be something I think would definitely benefit your presentations, to make sure you're using their names, and, because there's no better sound in the English language than your own name, right? When you hear David or Josh or Janine, it peaks you up and it brings you back in, because you're being directly addressed. And it takes away all the hiding place as well. If there's 3 to 7 people in a class, and I say, what do you guys think? If I'm the shy one in the corner, or and I don't feel like communicating, or I'm not understanding, I may not come back into the question. I may just kind of hide behind the generalness, if you will. So directed questions at individuals, both to get them thinking. What do you think happens when we take a red thing underwater? Josh, what do you think about that? You know, getting them thinking about what the process is and getting them involved that way. And then at the end, Josh, what happened to the red when it went down? You know, so the knowledge test question. So remember, direct questions, individual question, direct questions about getting them thinking, direct questions to test their knowledge, and then general questions to make sure that we've got the overall audience as well. But overall, I think we did a great job. I counted 5 overall questions throughout the process, so that's great. And then finally, you talked about Roatan a lot. One of the sections is Con Ed or local dive, promoted continuous education or local dive travel. You mentioned Roatan several times. Is our shop going to Roatan?
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was going to mention that. I forgot that point.
No
but
worries. You mentioned several times.
Yeah, I made sure to throw in that continued education stuff so that.
No, the continued Con Ed was there. Absolutely. You got the points for it. But it would have been an easy transition. Hey, by the way, our shop is going to Roatan in October. And we're leaving October 1st. We'd love to have you on that. The trip costs are extremely low. It's a full encompassing. You're going to see all kinds of like stuff like this. And I love that you had individual pictures in there as well. So it would have been an easy transition. It was mentioned several times. But yeah, I mean, you directly brought in Con Ed. So yeah, overall, I think you did a great job. Janine, what do you think?
I think so too. That was an easy pass for me. It is hard for me to believe that you are just new to scuba diving, because it was very good. You would have passed had you been going for the Assistant Instructor Trainer seminar. So I especially loved the video. I've never seen that video before, and the picture of the light rays and the turbidity, it helped you get that point across, because now we had a visual reference of what you were referring to. When I try to promote experience or continuing education, I like to pick one course, and this is just a Janine opinion. It's in my opinion, then you can go into depth on that course and say, hey, if you enjoyed this, to get to see the colors really change underwater, we want to get you underwater. And to get you underwater, the best way to do that is by taking our open water diver course. And this is what we're going to do in this course. What I explained to Benjamin the other day is I like to go ahead and open that course and look at the practical application sections of that and see exactly what we're going to be covering in that course. And then give some really fun, exciting examples of that to really draw them in. If we only mention like 4 different courses, then their minds are a little bit on overload and they're like, ooh, which one should I pick? And because I want to try to keep them in scuba diving, and I don't know if y'all's dive center does free diving, we don't. And so I don't want to lose my customers to the free diving program. I want to keep them in our scuba diving program. So rarely do I mention free diving, but another example is we do extended range at our dive center. So no, I would not promote that to a try scuba or to a snorkeling course, but because we do offer that, I might, if it's applicable to the topic that they're covering, mention extended range. But overall, I was so impressed with your presentation. I would, if I'm trying to not count off for y'all not doing as much class participation. Because we're doing this over Zoom, and it's really hard when no one's answering your questions. It puts you in an uncomfortable situation. And so all of us as a whole team, we need to really help Josh out and answer his questions when he asks them. But typically, if we're in person, I like to throw as many training aids into the presentation as possible, and as many practical application sessions to get them up out of their chairs and involved in the presentation as much as possible, because we do learn better when we're actively participating. So just that's a little quick tip for you whenever you're helping Benjamin teach. Just throw those fun activities in your presentation, and it makes it more fun, and they will learn more. So, but very, very good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had nothing but impressed, Josh. That was, I think sometimes it's one of the ideas is that you do great because you don't know any other way to do. We've given you a very clear set of rules, and you haven't figured out to overthink things. So the less you can, I think, in these presentations, especially when you start talking tri-scuba, perfect buoyancy, and even open water, I think our tendency, and I fall into this, and I've been admonished and counseled on this myself numerous times, even in my ITC, for my evaluation. The evaluator told me, he says, Benjamin, we get it. You are absolutely a fantastic technical diver. You know your stuff, but you got to be a little dumber in these presentations. You can't be the level you're teaching at. You're teaching at too high a level. And I have absolutely been guilty of that a lot. And David has seen that, where I over talk the subject, or I'll overthink the subject. And I've got so much fun information. I want you to know it all right now. You must know it, right? The muffin and Tommy Boy always comes to my little precious, and you end up destroying what you're trying to get out because you put too much into it. And there's nothing wrong with having passion. We have to always remember who we're talking to. And I think that's great that you, at this point, you're still learning, and so you don't have too much information to give at this point. You're still at that level and understand it, so it makes it easier. So I encourage you through this process is, while you gain more information, you're going to gain a lot, because we've got 3 classes coming up, you and me, together to work through. So, and it gets exciting. So don't allow that exuberance and excitement to overwhelm what you're teaching and who you're teaching to. You certainly don't want to teach to a high schooler the ideas of gradient factor. They will be like, what the hell are you talking about? Stay at this level with who you're talking to. It's perfect. And I agree with Janine. Absolutely, you passed at a level above what my class is. So fantastic. So
yeah, no, the technical thing was one thing I struggled with when I was putting the slides together, because I kept on. The last presentations I've given have been very, technical for my computer science major. So I was in there, and I was like, I want to go a lot more into deep, like behind the science of this and all this stuff. And I was just kind of like, they don't care about that. Like, you might care about that, but they don't care about that. So
exactly,
just kind of keep it simple, so that they can kind of, in things that they would understand or care about or think are interesting.
No, you did a great job of keeping it thin. I felt you trying to head to that. I could feel the magnetic pull of the too much TMI pulling you, but you did a good job of reining it back in. It's easy. It really is. You get to that point of level where, I have a hard time with as well. I could teach 26 specialties and technical, right? I have this broad width of information. I get so excited. You need to know this. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't know. They don't want to. And I think this week with my grandson, who's 8 years old, has reinforced that a lot for me as well, because we've talked about a lot of things, and we get together with a lot of things, and I realized, wait a minute, this is who I'm teaching to. He doesn't need to know this, because it'll just bounce right off him. And he's a little ADD, and he's a sweet kid. I love him with all my heart, because he's just an amazing little blonde-haired kid, but he's 8, and so as we talk about things, we don't need to get too deep into things. We're going to do a tri-scuba with him either tonight or tomorrow night. So as we go through this, we, talk to your audience, right? In my job in my day job, it's, speak to your audience. I don't talk about foreign OEMs to domestic OEMs, because they don't like to hear about it, right? We remember your audience. You did a great job of that, though. I felt you going that way, but you never crossed the line, in my opinion, on that. So good job.
Thanks.
David, should we go through and do your full review? I'd love to hear Janine's thoughts on your presentation.
David, I also thought that you did very well. That was an easy pass for me. You guys are lucky to have Benjamin, because apparently he's doing a very good job of explaining to you what is required. And like he said earlier, when we know what's required of us from the beginning, then these presentations are not as difficult. So let's see. You started off, so I always look at the objective, and you said, today we will learn, and you told us what we were going to learn. I typically like, and this is a Janine opinion, I like a statement for my objective. Today we are going to learn about, and explain exactly what we're going to be learning about. And then my main points are a list. These are my main points. And I only give the main points. I don't go into covering the main points, and I don't really expand on the main points at all at the beginning. I wait for that to the body of the presentation, and you did that, and that was very good. So on your continuing education, you mentioned science of diving. I love that class. But when we're talking to a tri-scuba class, that, like Benjamin already kind of explained this to Joshua earlier while you were looking for your puppy, with science of diving, that would be a good progression if I knew anyone ever wanted to, if there was even a remote possibility that they wanted to be a dive professional, I'm going to want to get them on that path, because that's a course that they're going to need. With tri-scuba, the next natural progression course would have been open water diver. And in that case, I would have, like I said earlier, give examples of what we are going to do in that course. So that's just a little tip for you. And I did take a point off for that because it wasn't really applicable to what that level of training would be for. And then equipment sales and motivation to purchase. I didn't hear any pieces of equipment that you were trying to encourage your divers to buy. I know Benjamin said that it's required to buy the mask, snorkel, fins, and everything. So more than likely they've already purchased that by the time they're doing.
Yeah, for our tri-scuba, we don't require mask, snorkel, and fins. We don't require that until the open water class. And so that was my big sale for the tempered glass and nose pocket. Make sure you buy a scuba certified mask. Our shop sells nothing but scuba certified.
And that is a very good point. So now that you reminded me that you were talking about the mask, it's hard, Benjamin, to review. Yeah. Like you said earlier, you wanted to talk to David immediately so that we can remember what all was covered and everything. So yes, but now that you mentioned that, but we want to have a clear motivation to purchase. So usually what I like to do is say, this is one of the masks that we sell in our dive center, at our dive center. It comes in these colors, if you want to have it match your fins. Girls are kind of picky that way. And then say, after this session, we are going to go ahead and we're going to go up front to the store, and I'll actually show you all the different colors. Also, when I'm teaching, I make sure that there's enough masks for everyone to go ahead and try them on. And I go ahead and demonstrate how you test to see if it's a good fit or not. And I'll even kind of close the cell just a little bit on which color mask or which style mask are you going to purchase today, and kind of close that cell. I'm not a natural salesperson. It is very uncomfortable for me, except for the fact that I truly believe that it is in our best interest to own our own equipment. And so that makes me a little bit of a better salesperson, because I believe in what I'm saying. I loved your PowerPoint presentation. I also love that you brought in the app. Anytime that we can get them to open that app, it teaches them under our guidance how to use it. So if they had any questions, especially in tri-scuba, now we're right there with them, and they have that app open, and we can help get them started really using that app and showing them all the amazing features that it has. So thank you for bringing that in. I had, PowerPoint presentation, mask, and that app. So you easily passed that section with those. And I felt like you asked a lot of questions. It was difficult for you, David, because we weren't participating enough. And that made it difficult for you to have class class participation and motivation to participate. One, because we're not there in front of you, right with you, but two, because we all needed to answer your questions and help you with the progression of your presentation here. At the end, I did not hear you restate your value. Do you remember if you did that? If you told us why it was so important that we listen to your presentation?
I know I have a slide relisting the values, but I just kind of skimmed across it. I didn't spend as much time as I probably could have.
Well, and if I missed,
yeah, I heard the value, but it was very very race car in nature. So I hit him on a point on that one.
okay. Well, and like I said earlier, when we are both listening and grading at the same time, sometimes we miss stuff. So I apologize that I didn't hear that. But overall, David, it was excellent. And I hope you plan on continuing your progression into the professional side of things, because both of you guys, SSI would be lucky to have both of you guys, because you have a good way of explaining things. And like Benjamin said, you didn't talk over our heads. The way you presented your topics were very appropriate to the scope of the courses that you were teaching. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Good job. David, are you ready for part two? Josh, David, I guess my direct question to you both is, how, now that you've both been through one presentation in this format, how helpful is this for you, David? Let's start with you.
I have never been a fan of online presentations. They're very far outside of my comfort zone. So, but I do like that we can have the simpler presentation and allow it to be just a little more convenient for everybody involved. So I guess overall the benefits outweigh the cons, but yeah,
it's a little different. I get that I live in this world, but what I have, just, I would hope you take away from this is, what I have learned from online presentation is that I have to work harder than I have to do an in-person presentation. I have to be more interactive, and I have to be more directive of, David, I need to hear from you. Josh, I need to hear from you. Janine, and being very directive to make sure, because it's really easy. And you and I both know, David, there's been more than once you've been in one of my presentations where I'm teaching, you've turned your camera off and I can't see you. And all of a sudden it's magical how many more questions you get when I can't see you versus when I can see you. If I can see you and I know, and I think you're present, you're there, I tend to ask less questions. But if I can't see you and I wonder what you're doing, all of a sudden your questions increase tenfold. And that's always been, and sometimes I'll tell people at the beginning of a presentation that, hey, if I can't see you and I don't know what you're doing, I'm going to ask a lot more questions. Oh my God, Donnie actually went to the shop.
Oh, man.
I just texted him. I love Donnie, but he's definitely a hard nut sometimes. But anyway, so that's one of the things I've learned through online presentations, where I can't see people. I don't know what's going on. I am very big on you, and I get really involved because I don't know what's going on, and I have to make sure that people are uptaking the information. So it makes it even easier when we do get live, where I can see people. you and I both know that when we've had the teenagers in class, that I pick on them, especially when they start doing the turn away and it looks like they're drawing hearts in their notebooks that I give them. So I definitely pick on the people who I can see are not paying attention, and I get involved. And you and I both know that when people are doing well, I'll walk into the class and I give them high fives and fist bumps throughout the process, and I get right up on top of them in virtual. And I've gotten that because of virtual, but because if I don't know what you're doing, then I go for it. So that's my encouragement of what I've gotten out of online presentations. If I don't know, I get really kind of up in their face. Josh, what did you get out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I like the online presentations, but I do think it makes it hard for class engagement, especially for me, where I'm a bit more of like a visual learner, and I don't necessarily like I think direct questions are important, but I don't necessarily like them or like giving them. I like kind of like getting people out of their seat and like engaging them with an activity, or like do this. Like, I just taught you how to use a snorkel. Like, show me how to use the snorkel.
Exactly.
And you just can't do that online. But I mean, it is just kind of nice to everyone's kind of in their own comfort area, and it's a lot easier to do slides and do other things. But
Right on. Well, good. I'm hoping you guys are gaining from this. I think you guys are boiling away. And honestly, David will tell you flat out that I don't invite people into the mentorship of Dive Guide unless I believe that they'll be successful and add value to that process and add value to the shop. So I'm selective on who we invite to that process to go all the way. So that's David. I think you'd agree with that. I mean, how many people do I invite into our mentorship program of Dive Guide, Dive Master?
You mention it to everybody, but as far as direct invitations go, I think every invitation you've extended has been accepted. So.
Yeah. We talk about it to see who's interested, and then from that point out, the people who I don't think would be a value or it would benefit us or them, I just stopped talking about it completely with them. But certainly gauge interest, but through that process. So you guys are obviously fantastic, and I appreciate you guys and everything you guys helped me with. I know my classes would not be nearly what they were without your guys' assistance to the process and helping me. So I really appreciate you guys and everything you do, and coming in this morning to help me with my AIT. I mean, that means the world to me. So I appreciate you. And Janine, I actually ended up giving several student shop credits to David because he cut the hole in the ice for me.
Okay. So David was the one who had the hard job.
Exactly. So when it comes down to it, cutting the hole in the ice is not easy. That is a good 20 to 40 minute process of getting a hole through the daggum ice. So it's work.
So 20 to 40 minutes it takes to get the saw running to start. So
yes, absolutely. And I don't have the nicest saw in the world. It only gets used a few times a year, and I only use it for ice. So you can figure that out really quick. I don't actually use it for. So that's a new Dive Master skill that you probably don't get in Texas very often. My dive masters have to know how to run a saw and cut ice.
Nope, definitely not.
Perfect. All right, David, what are you presenting next?
All right. So we are going to present on perfect buoyancy. Hopefully this works here. All right. Can you guys see that?
Give me a moment, and I will add it to the stream. There you go. Perfect buoyancy.
Perfect. All right. So, assuming now we're all open water divers who are working on perfect buoyancy. Objectives today, we're going to talk about why perfect buoyancy is the best method for protecting the environment, describe the various fin kicks used to protect the environment, and identify additional programs and activity for environmentally conscious divers. We're going to talk about the environment because the underwater world is a very delicate world. Recovery times on it are absolutely insane. So we're going to talk about each of those. We're going to talk about the various fin kicks, how to make sure that we're not being the clumsy klutz, bull in the china shop kind of thing. And we're going to talk about a few other programs we can do to further increase our care of the world. And that also covers the overview as well. Protecting the environment. Underwater world is incredibly delicate. Everything down there is not meant for human presence, and so humans, like we are on the surface, on the underwater world, we are very much a visitor, and we need to make sure that we're protecting the environment that we're a part of, so that others down the road can enjoy the beauty of that as well. One of the biggest dangers that we will absolutely present with our sediment. Everybody remembers in their open water class when everybody goes down, hits that bottom, and the bottom just explodes, and all of a sudden you can't see anything because there's silt and muck running around all over the place, right? And that sediment, when it kicks up, it ruins the dive. You know, it makes it really hard for us all to see everything. But beyond that, when that sediment settles back down, it settles down on top of things, and a lot of the things that it settles down on are living organisms, especially in the coral reef system. And the coral reefs can't just pick up and move around. You know, if it lands on a crab or a crawfish or whatever it may be, that animal's going to shake off the sediment and keep going about its life. But when it lands on top of plants, when it lands on top of coral, that coral can't just shake that off. And so that sediment can actually end up harming the environment quite a bit. And the other big thing is the reef itself is incredibly delicate. And so if we go down, we have too much negative buoyancy on ourselves. We're going to come down, we're going to hit that bottom, we're going to break things off, we're going to knock pieces loose. And I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever broken anything, but if you've ever broken something, I have to imagine that wasn't the most pleasant experience for you. And so the recovery times, especially on reefs, could be your lifetime or even your grandchildren's lifetime before those reefs are able to recover from the damage that just one errant fin kick could cause. So we need to make sure that we're being incredibly gentle in our underwater environment, remembering that we're visitors all the time, and try to be as kind to the environment as we can be, because the underwater environment is not a very forgiving environment. Everything that we do has real world consequences. So for this, we're going to talk about fin kicks especially. Up to this point, we've mostly just been doing flutter kicks and dolphin kicks and all the kicks that we do in open water. But one of the kicks that you see, especially amongst the instructors here at the shop, is the frog kick. You notice that we all go knees up, feet facing the surface, and we just do that kind of frog kick where we're kicking out and sideways rather than up and down. And that frog kick allows us to protect the bottom. It keeps our feet high. It keeps our fin tips out of the muck and goo. It doesn't work as well when we're going down an incline because our feet are still dragging down behind us on that incline. So we have to remember to come up a little bit higher off the surface on an incline. But when we're on a flat surface, when we're out on the plains of the water, that frog kick keeps our feet really high up off the bottom, and that allows us to swim very gently through the environment. And then the trim position is incredibly crucial on this to keep ourselves flat and level in the water. I just realized you can't see my hands what I'm doing. So keeping that our feet up above our heads in the water allows us to protect our environment to the best of our abilities. If while you're swimming at any point you do have an accidental contact, what do you think the most important thing to do is?
just stop moving completely.
Stop moving completely. That is absolutely right. If you ever are down there in the water and you accidentally kick something, hopefully it's your dive buddy, but all the same, let's immediately stop moving, because probably the worst thing that I've gone through down in the water is you get a little crowded, you get a whole lot of bodies moving. The water here in Idaho is definitely not the clearest of water, and so it's really hard to see what you're doing. And I got into almost an underwater mosh pit, and one person kicked my mask, one person kicked my regulator. I've got water in my mask, I've got water in my mouth, and everybody's just kind of thrashing around and they just keep kicking. I don't even know if it was the same person that kicked each. And so if you feel something contact your fins, stop moving. That's absolutely right. The very first thing you want to do. Second thing you want to do, tuck your knees. Just pull your knees up to your chest, and that will immediately pull your feet away from whatever they're kicking. You know, we're very used to our body, and I don't know if any of you guys ride bikes. Any of you guys ride bikes?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. You ever wear your helmet inside and hit your head on something because you've just got that extra, inch and a half of helmet there? So when we have our fins on, we are adding, depending on what kind of fin you have, between a foot and even 3 feet to the length of our bodies. And it's very easy to forget that extra length is there. So pulling our knees up immediately pulls all that extra length away from whatever we were kicking. And ironically, we're going to encourage you to do one of the things we've been discouraging from the start. We're going to ask you to use your hands at that point. You just kind of pull yourself through the water until you're away from whatever you were kicking. Hopefully the water isn't too turbid. You can look behind you, see what you've kicked at that point. And once you've pulled yourself clear with your hands, go ahead and stretch your feet back out and resume your frog kick. But it's very important, absolutely, to stop kicking if we accidentally kick something, and especially until we've realized what we've kicked. If it's your dive buddy, by all means, go ahead and stretch your legs back out immediately and kick away, depending on how much you like them. But just remember they have fins too. So as far as continuing education on this subject, we have a lot of ecology programs, both SSI and local programs. There are a ton of opportunities between Idaho and Utah to better our environment. We just had a dive along where we picked up trash. We ended up taking not quite a trash bag. It felt like a ton of trash coming up out of the water until we piled it in the bag, and then it was like, wow, that was not nearly as much as we felt like we pulled. But the dive shop does cleanups on a fairly regular basis, so by all means, reach out and ask about when the next cleanup's going to be. I haven't heard if we're doing a July cleanup. I know the July holidays keep us all pretty busy, so I don't think we're doing one in July, but it's likely we'll do one in August. So if you have the opportunity to dive along with us, we would love that. If not, there's the mussel programs and all that stuff to help keep our waterways protected. And again, Science of Diving is an excellent program to learn more about how to protect our underwater environment and the effects of the people on the underwater environment. And so if you have an opportunity to be a part of any of these, we'd love to have you. I'm working on my assistant instructor, so I can teach the ecology program soon. I'd love to have the opportunity to teach you in those. So today, hopefully you've learned quite a bit. Hopefully we've explained things clearly. Ben, would you be willing to explain why perfect buoyancy is the best method for protecting your environment? Just a brief synopsis.
Sorry about that. I muted up. I apologize. So keeping you off the bottom, keeping you from crashing into things like coral or things that might bite you, sting you, or hurt you.
Absolutely. And there are things, unfortunately, under the water that bite, sting, and hurt. So, Josh, what's the best fin kick used to protect our environment?
Frog kick.
Frog kick, absolutely. And Janine, did any of those programs particularly stand out to you to further your ability to protect the environment?
Definitely those the ecology courses, because you said that you teach them, and I really would love to do another course with you.
I'm working on being able to teach them. I'm not quite there, but I would love to have that opportunity down the road with you. So,
Okay.
all right. Topic values. Perfect buoyancy absolutely protects the delicate underwater world. You know, we love to dive because there's so much to do and see under the water. We want to make sure that opportunities down there for the people who come after us. A lot of us will only have the opportunity to go to the more exotic dive sites once or twice, but there are hundreds of thousands of people on this earth who also want to come behind us and see those sites as well. The frog kick, in addition to protecting the environment, it's also a really easy stroke once you got it down, and that knee tuck allows you to protect your underwater environment and make the dive a little more enjoyable for everybody around you, because as we all know, anybody who's ever experienced an excessively turbid water knows you ruin it for everybody when you kick the bottom. Additional programs, the more we learn, the better an experience we have, the more comfortable we get under the water, etc. And it just keeps building on itself. It makes life a lot more enjoyable for all of us. So today we learned about perfect buoyancy, how that helps to protect the environment, why we should protect the environment. We learned the various fin kicks used to protect the environment, and we learned a couple of additional programs to help build upon that.
All right. David, I give you an easy pass on this as well, but I'm guessing she as well. Good
Yes.
job. One of the things I might encourage, David, is with working with students, it's been my experience that if we don't catch their attention quickly, we get them into drowsy state, and when we reduce their ability to uptake information. If it feels too much like a lecture, I remember going through college and getting those very dry professors, and they'd always make sure to put the key information I needed for my final exam or whatever it was towards the end of it. But the problem is by that point, I was already asleep. You know, if it was a 2-hour lecture and all the good information was in the last 20 minutes, or I a lot of times missed it, and I would always go to my study buddy. Hey, I didn't catch this part of the information. He's like, yeah, that was an hour, 1 hour and 30 minutes into the lecture. And you're like, oh, okay, that's why I didn't catch it, because I was asleep. So we definitely want to participate and get people thinking early on and quickly. The more we can ask questions early into the presentation to get them thinking. So, you might start off with, right after you get through your main points, objectives, and values, of saying, guys, Janine, what do you think about flutter kick? What did you learn about the flutter kick when we went out to open water in the lake? We went out the lake together. What did you notice when you did that? Oh yeah, you kicked up a lot of sediment, right? Josh, what did you notice about this? What do you think about this? I know I've seen you start into your frog kick. Have you noticed a difference? Or have you noticed what it feels like when you don't crash into things? You know, get them thinking early on. and get him asking questions a lot. The more questions you can ask early on that are directive of getting them thinking, you'll have a higher knowledge retention towards the end as well. Overall, I mean, I counted five overall questions. Actually, I take that back. There were seven. I remember two more that through the process. So I caught 7 questions throughout. They were great, and that's awesome. I just encourage not spread them out, but add some more at the beginning, middle as well. Remember, we talked about a direct question to get them thinking, a direct question to test knowledge, and then a general question to the crowd. Right? If you use those 3 kinds of questions often, you'll tend to engage your audience a little bit more. And it's not the fact that it's 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday is not lost on me, as well as the fact that I know that you're not super comfortable with online presentations. So those 2 facts aren't lost on me. I just think if you can get good at that here, the class participation, it makes it a lot easier as well. And that's something I've noticed with your presentations live as well, that get the questions early and often, right? It is definitely something that will benefit your presentations even more, and take that. But again, I think you did a fantastic job overall. I didn't hear any direct questions on equipment, though. Did you ask anything? Talk about equipment sales?
Nope. I was going to talk about fins and forgot.
It happens. Not a worry. Retail therapy. I remember my presentations. There's SSI used to use ART as an acronym: actual experience, retail, and then training. If you can make sure to get those 3 things: ART, actual experience, retail opportunities, and training into every presentation. And remember that acronym. I don't think SSI has used that in a long time, but that's how I remember my presentations. Is did I hit all 3 ART, actual, retail, and training?
And, I like to take them around the actual shop where I've got everything there. I can be like, oh yeah, this, that,
absolutely
look at everything. I love to do the retail side of things.
I do. Absolutely. It makes it easier if you
in the
get
store
those 3 things in. But other than that, I didn't catch that, but that was the only major doc I got, but there was still enough points in that section to create a pass. So it's an easy pass. Janine, what was your thoughts?
I thought it was excellent as well. Y'all are really blowing me away on these presentations, and I don't say that lightly. We have had candidates in the past where I have to ask myself, what did I do wrong in presenting the information to them of what was required? Because they would have quite a few points taken away for various things. So again, Benjamin's doing a great job training you and getting you ready for these presentations. So the equipment, I also noticed that you didn't try to promote that, and how I would have handled that is when you were talking about the fin kicks, I would have brought a couple of different pairs of fins, and I would have actually shown them, okay, to do the frog kick, here is how we're going to do it. We're going to extend our legs, we're going to push our feet together, and that is going to propel us forward. And also explain with that finning technique how, when we do that fanning technique, we have a moment to relax. And so we're actually using more air, and our air will last us longer and allow us to take, be underwater for even longer. And while I had my fins out, I would have shown them the RK3s, and I would have shown them, a different style of fin, maybe one that's longer, that is a little more flexible, because the RK3s are a little bit stiffer. And I would have kind of brought that in to show them the different fins that we have and explain the pros and cons for those fins. And that would have brought them into wanting to purchase a pair of fins from us. Hopefully by the time they're doing perfect buoyancy, they already have a pair of fins, but I can't tell you how many pairs of fins I've gone through trying to find that perfect fin. And so you may have even been able to say, you can borrow mine and try them in the pool, make sure you're going to like them before you use them, something like that. But we definitely always want to encourage that equipment sales. in every presentation that we do. I feel like if I had to pick one area that I would love to have you to kind of challenge you to work on a little bit more, that would be class participation and motivation. Throwing in those active learning sessions and getting everybody up. And you guys are welcome to, even though we're on video, I would give you credit if you said, okay, everybody stand up right now. And I want to take you over to the SSI poster on the wall over here outside of the screen and say, everybody hop up. Let's go look at these classes that, that we have coming up this week. And I also explained that we can live in a bit of a pretend world when we're practicing our presentations and say, we have these ecology courses starting, this Saturday, and it's going to be in the afternoon, so you don't have to wake up too early, and we can pretend and make up that information since we're just practicing doing our presentations. But overall, very, very good job. Very impressed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. All right, Johnny, are you feeling comfortable enough to present, or you want to watch one more?
I would love to, but I can't quite make the internet work. I keep getting kicked off it. I get on, I get off. So I'm trying to.
Does it actually letting you sign into the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I can get in, and then I go to open the StreamYard link, and then it kicks me off the Wi-Fi.
You got a VPN?
Maybe.
Perfect. I'll tell you what, while you work on that and try that, we'll go back to Josh. We have David in the background with me. He I apparently didn't explain. Huh? Dawn, sorry. Dawn in the background. It's 7:00 on a Sunday. We have Dawn in the background. He went over to the dive shop and mistakenly this morning. I didn't apparently I wasn't super clear on that. So he's having a hard time getting on the Wi-Fi. But so we'll go through Josh if that's okay.
Poor Don. He just wanted to hang out with you.
He did. He left his sweatshirt in my truck the last time, and he's got 2 of his bottles. I picked him up at the dive shop for him, so I've got 2 bottles for him downstairs as well. So he was really excited to come over and get his sweatshirt, and which Nikki washed for him, which was very nice of her. So, but we'll go through that, and let's go through Josh. Josh, what's your topic on this one?
Yeah, so it's from the snorkeling class again, section 2, just water temperature.
From the Tri-Scuba, you said?
No, the snorkeling.
Snorkeling, okay, snorkeling. Thank you. All right, whenever you're ready.
All right, so yeah, I'm just going to go over water temperature from the snorkeling class. So kind of our objectives, what we're going to learn today is we're going to understand how water temperature affects our bodies. We're going to talk about wetsuits or dry skin benefits, and then we're going to talk about convection. So why do you guys think that it would be important to learn about water temperature while you're snorkeling?
Water gets cold.
Hypothermia.
Yeah. So those are important value that understanding the water temperature will bring to us is, like David said, hypothermia, and then preventing you from just being cold and keeping you comfortable in the water. Because the more comfortable you are in the water, the longer you're going to stay in the water and the more you're going to be able to enjoy. So the main point in water temperature is what is a wetsuit? What are the protections it offers? How direct contact with the water will actually remove our body heat and make us colder. And then understanding the principle of convection, which is why we would want to wear an exposure suit, and how that will increase our time in the water. So basically, a wetsuit comes in several different sizes. you have, like you can see from this diagram, you have a shorty, and then you have a 3 millimeter, and then the temperatures down here. So even though like you might think 85 degrees is really hot in the water, you still might want to wear a shorty. And then obviously as you get colder, as you get to the 70 to 80, you might think about doing a full 3 mil, and then even colder, a 5 mil, 7 mil, all the way to a dry suit. So what do you guys think the benefits of wearing a dry suit would be, or a wetsuit would be?
Well, it also helps protect our bodies, like we aren't as likely to get a sunburn or get stung by something like jellyfish in the water.
Yeah, so that's a great point. Really, wearing a wetsuit adds a layer between us and the environment. So if something runs into us or we run into something, like it's going to be harder for it to sting us if we're wearing a wetsuit. As well as if you're going to be on the surface for long periods of time, you don't want to get sunburned. So having that layer between you and the sun will prevent sunburn. And then it will also help protect you from the colder water. And then another benefit is it gives you extra buoyancy. So you don't have to work as hard to try to float on the surface. So if you're interested in a wetsuit to kind of protect you from the cold and give you some of these other benefits, we sell them at the shop, and the shop will help fit you, find you the right size, and find you the thickness and kind of what you want for the snorkeling that you're going to be doing. So the big thing with water temperature is we want to retain our body heat. So who's here, like if the weather outside is 75 degrees, who's pretty comfortable? Who likes 75-degree weather?
I do.
Yeah? No, it's a bit too cold for you, Janine?
It's a bit too chilly, yes.
So what do you think about 80-degree water temperature? Do you think that would be, I mean, that's a little warmer. Do you think that would be fine for you to be in the water 80 degrees all day?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. So the trick is with water is water will remove your body heat 25 times faster than the air temperature. So we really need to be careful. While we might think that 80 degrees outside is perfect and we might want to stay there or stay outside all day, our bodies want to remain at the constant temperature. They want to be in that comfort zone for them. So anytime we get in water that is colder than our body temperature, the water will hold, or our body will give the heat to the water. So while you may be able to stay out in 80-degree air temperatures all day, the same isn't true for water. A good example is if you have like a glass of water, this is just room temperature water, and you stick your finger in it. I mean, this water is about the same temperature as the air, but when I stick my finger in it, I notice that it's colder than the air. So you can just kind of see that just by just touching water, that you can feel the water taking the heat away from you. And that's what you're feeling when you put your finger or when you get into the water. And a big thing for snorkelers, unlike swimmers, is swimmers might be fine because they're constantly moving. They're, swimming around, doing laps, doing whatever. Whereas snorkeling, you really just kind of want to stay there and enjoy the water. And so you're not generating the body heat that swimmers would be generating. So you really want to make sure that you are wearing a wetsuit and that you're protecting your body heat so that you don't go into hypothermia. Because the longer you stay in the water, or even if you get out and warm up a little bit and then get back in the water, you're still going to be at a greater risk of hypothermia because your body temperature is constantly decreasing. So we need to wear light exposure suits. Typically they're trilaminates and some other materials, but they provide a good thermal protection between the water temperature and our body temperature. So the main principle that makes this happen is called convection. And basically convection is basically you're your body heat is trying to warm the water around you. So basically, your body is trying to warm the whole lake or warm the whole ocean, which at a certain point, your body is no longer going to be able to warm yourself because you're warming all the water around you. So the way a wetsuit works is it basically traps a layer of water between you and the water outside of the wetsuit, and allows you to be able to just warm the water next to you. And so it basically traps a layer of warm water between you and your body. So instead of you trying to warm the whole ocean, you are just warming that layer of water that's in the wetsuit. And like I said earlier, use too much heat through convection, that can lead to hypothermia, which is again very serious. And that's why it's important that we kind of understand the way convection works, and how we can keep ourselves warm and don't put ourselves at risk, because we obviously want to stay comfortable and stay in the water for a longer time. So that's really the advantages of wearing a wetsuit, and why you should care about the water temperature. So if you really like snorkeling, I would suggest going into either our tri scuba course, or just going straight into the open water course. I started out snorkeling and then did the open water course, and I really love getting deeper, seeing more things, experiencing more things in the ocean. And so I'd really recommend doing the open water course and getting certified. So what I hope that we've learned today is understanding how the water temperature affects our body, the benefit of wetsuits, as well as what convection is and how that plays a role in removing our body heat. The importance again is we obviously want to avoid hypothermia. We want to stay warm. We don't want to be cold. And we really just want to maximize our time in the water, because that's why we're snorkeling, is to be in the water and be comfortable and see all the marine life and see everything that there is to be there. So then to recap the main points, scuba divers and snorkelers often wear wetsuits because it helps protect us. It offers a lot of protections against the cold water, against stinging animals, or stinging plant life. And it helps us protect us from the sun, because the last thing you want to do is get out of the water and realize that you just burned your whole back, which has happened to me. So the wetsuit, or direct contact with water will remove your body heat 25 times faster than the air will in the same temperatures. And then just recapping convection, it's basically your body giving away to the environment around you. And so that's why we want exposure suits, to help trap that water so that we're only warming a thin layer of water. And then it will just increase our time in the water and make us more comfortable. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Nicely done. Nicely done, Josh. Absolutely. The only thing a couple of small dings, direct questions to an individual person to make sure that you've got that person's engagement. You did a lot of general questions, and you definitely got response. But I would definitely make sure that I'm tagging each person throughout the process to make sure that they're feeling included as well. I mean, in today's climate, we talk a lot about inclusion, right? And from certain cultures, but it's not a bad thing in this to make sure we're really tagging it and including that individual person. Dawn, what did you think of this? David, what do you think about that? John, get to that individual person and give them that individual attention, if you will. I think we've all been through, a college course or high school or our master's programs or whatever program we were in, that where we had a professor or a teacher that was we could feel like they were directly involved in our lives. And the way they did that is really by calling us out. Hey, Janine, what did you think about that? Right. Or this. And we've had those professors that I absolutely knew they didn't know who I was. I was a number in a class and somewhere in there, and I could tell they didn't give a crap about me because I was never called on. They didn't know who I was. They just were interested in, I'm going to give you the information and this is what you're going to get. Right. And not that you did that. But I'm saying you'll get a better class engagement and a better class experience with that includes making sure you hit David, and hit each person and when you can hit them by name. That's something I struggled with at first because I'm bad with names to start with, but I've really worked hard in my open water classes to make sure I'm getting those names. And you remember from that last class where Bruce jokingly told my wife his name was Bryce just to mess with her, and he did it so deadpan. He got me, but for the rest of the class, I'd make sure, hey Bryce, my name's Bruce. That's not true what you told us earlier, and we made it very personal. So we had that fun experience where we kept calling him Bryce just to be funny, and it was a fun experience, but it made it more fun, right? We called out his name, or Petra, or Ken, right?
Sure.
Ken was my one challenge in that class because he was a very quiet young man. He's a teenager, and he was just very quiet. So we had to really work to get him involved more than we did with as well. And Petra, the same thing. We tried to find ways, and we say Petra, and try and find teenage ways to get her involved as well. So that would be my encouragement through that process. The one thing I just question, what is Trilam and when did you use Trilam?
I mean, that's just the construction of the wetsuit, isn't it?
Okay, not a word. It's a construction of a dry suit. We use Bilam, Trilam, and things like that. It's a dry suit. So I dinged you on that one just by 1 point. Just making sure you understand that. But I understand where you're at as well. But it's a minor thing. But when I heard that, I was like, does he understand the difference between that? So crushed neoprene is what we use for wetsuits or neoprene. So just be aware. If you're not quite sure what something is, maybe either ask me or do a little deeper research to understand that we're putting out a good, safe, accurate information. That was super. I mean, that is extremely nitpicky and minor, but it just kind of lent itself to an opportunity to say, hey, if there's something you're not quite sure about, either don't bring it up or ask me before, or ask or research it ahead of time so that we know what we've got that we're involving in our class, right? And it is. I mean, that is insanely nitpicky. It really is. I get it. It's not a safety violation in any way, shape, or form to bring up Trilam as being a wetsuit material, and it's not going to hurt anybody. But it lends itself to there are other things as we go through. I think David was involved in that class. I can't remember where. We had what's his name? I can't think of his name. The doctor. I can't think of his name to save my life. His wife was Jolene, and he talked about AGEs, and then he went into metacymal emphysema and talked about using a needle to decompress a chest during metacymal emphysema. Well, Dallin from that course, he took away from that information that's how we got rid of AGE. So we have to be very careful of little things that we bring up, how are we bringing them up, who are we bringing them up in front of, and how is that using, and how are they uptaking that information, right? And while this is super nitpicky, you can see really quickly, all of a sudden Dallin took that we should, the way to get rid of AGE is with a big needle, because he went to Brett and said, hey, where do I get this big needle and when do I use it for AGE? We're like, oh my God, no. That's not even a thing, right? And I think Don, were you there?
I was there.
Yes. And so it was never brought up for that. But so you just have to be careful of how you bring certain information up and that you're using key and accurate information. The doctor used key and accurate information. It just wasn't the place to use that key and accurate information. So I utilize that as an example that it's crazy how little things like that can turn into a huge safety violation and safety concern right? So just be very, very careful. If you don't know it, don't bring it up or ask me, and I'll be happy to. You guys know for a fact, if I don't know, I will tell you I don't know. In scuba, that doesn't come up very often, but it certainly does come up from time to time. And Don will tell you when it comes to react right things. There are things that I've gone to him and say, hey, can you help me understand the hemoglobin barrier in the lung structure? That's way beyond react right, but I don't understand it. And I was like, hey, can you help me understand this? And he's done a great job of helping me understand that kind of stuff. So little things. I just use that as the only example. I had to find something, right? You can't get it perfect with me. No, I'm just kidding. You could get it perfect. That is absolutely the thing. Janine, what do you think?
Again, a great presentation. I want to give y'all a couple of quick tips though on presentations. So if you'll go ahead and on your cell phone or on your computer, either one, go ahead and pull up the snorkeling program. I just want to show y'all an easy way to find the objectives and the main points. And we're in section 2, the snorkeling environment. And if you'll click on the area that says objectives, so it says to make it measurable, it says by the end of this session, students should be able to. Typically, I say, I use that more of a direct statement. By the end of this session, you will better understand, or you will be able to, and then I say my objective. So we read it through here, and because we're only taking out a little slice of the pie, we aren't going to mention all of these objectives, but we are going to find the one that applies to this topic. So it would be number 3. So by the end of the session, you will better understand how water temperature affects the body. That gives us the objective of the session, and it makes it measurable. Okay, so already there, I didn't have to think about it. I've got my objective checked off, and I know what that is. Then I click on water temperature, and anything in bold are your main points. So now our 2 main points are that we're going to talk about today is water temperature and understanding convection. It's just a list for those main points. We obviously have to read the material to decide what the value is, but that again is just a statement. And so, so kind of tip number 1 is on a PowerPoint presentation, less is more. Because if you put too much information on there, we are busy reading your presentation and we're not listening to you. And I want to listen to you, not read. And so on a PowerPoint, we want, bullet points, and that helps us remember what we're going to talk about, but also like photos, or I loved the video. I mean, I said that earlier, but I loved the video that y'all showed, but it's more of an accessory, not the presentation. So less is more on that. And then another thing is class participation and training aids can really come hand in hand. So had you brought in a wetsuit or given everyone a wetsuit and brought in all different, thicknesses of wetsuits, now we can touch it, taste it, smell it. We can see how it expands and it's a little bit stretchy, and we can really talk about how those wetsuits are made, because most of the time when you're snorkeling, you're not going to be in a dry suit unless you're in ice water, I guess. But usually we are in a wetsuit. So if you were at the shop and you could bring in a bunch of different wetsuits, we could give everyone a wetsuit, and now we can put it in their hands, and that makes it a training aid. If we just hold up the glass of water and we say, see this glass of water, I stick my finger in it and it's colder. Yes, that helped make it more relevant. Yes, I understood that better because you brought in that glass of water. But in a real life situation, you would have passed it around to everyone, correct? And everyone would have been able to feel that water, and that would have really kind of made your presentation better, because you have more training aids that everyone can utilize. But let's see. Yeah, no, that's it. That's all I have to offer, because that was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I did not hear a specific safe diving practice message or environmental message. You gave it to me in your value, and so I appreciated hearing it there. But we want to be very clear, on that safe diving practice message. Usually, I will encourage my students in the beginning, put on the board, listen, listen, listen. This is going to keep you safer, or this is going to help keep the environment safer. So even if it's just a slide that says safe diving practice message or environmental message, something to capture their attention. And because sometimes when we're listening to these presentations, our minds might be wandering, and that kind of pulls them back into the presentation. But that's what Benjamin was saying as well. I mean, if you call on people, they have no other option but to pay attention to you the whole time. And if you do that earlier in your presentation, then they know they better pay attention the whole time, because you might call on them again. Love your teaching style. Like I said earlier, I really hope that you continue down the path of becoming a dive professional and an instructor, because you make things very relevant and you are very approachable. You're not talking over our heads. You're happy and kind and friendly, and I think that most people would be able to learn very easily from you. So great job.
Thanks. So on the safe diving message, so I was kind of focusing on the hypothermia, like wear a wetsuit so you don't get hypothermia. But I guess I was kind of struggling to find water temperature, like as far as environment, or like protecting the environment, or like other safety things in there. I guess I was struggling to find in this.
Yeah, because you're floating on the surface. You're not really underwater. So it can be either safe diving practice message or environment. And so you're right. More of a safe diving practice message is better when talking about this topic. Sometimes it's a stretch. Sometimes we really have to think hard on, how would I benefit? How would I stay safer because of the water temperature? And you're right, hypothermia is the best one, especially if we are snorkeling in a very cold environment. We would definitely want exposure protection then. So good job.
Thank you.
But I'm going to have to go. I printed up some more evaluation forms. I'm going to have to go grab them before Donnie starts on his presentation. So if you'll excuse me just for a moment.
No worries. And one just safe diving message for you guys: please don't taste your wetsuits. That's gross.
Especially after
you
somebody
have a choice when you're wearing the hood, though.
Janine said, "Get your wetsuits out so you can touch them, feel them, taste them. Don't taste your wetsuits." I'm going to throw that out there right now. We all know what we do in those wetsuits, and that's gross.
So I remember when I started diving, the smell of neoprene, it was just like, ooh, gross. Now it's like one of those things that you smell neoprene and you relate it to positive experiences with diving. And so now whenever I walk in the closet and I smell that neoprene, it's like, kind of like whenever you haven't dove in a while and you get that first taste of that salt water, you're like, I'm home. I'm right where I belong. So.
Absolutely. And they have really nice citrus neoprene refresher.
Yep, I had. I don't dive in neoprene very often. Only on vacation for me. But other than that, I'm always in a dry suit. And so 2 weeks ago, we had open water, and unfortunately, I can't dive a dry suit with my students because that's not similar equipment. So I get closer to them by driving a semi-dry instead of a dry, so I stay warmer. Especially since 2 weeks ago I did 7 dives in one day, so it was a lot. I was in the water. I didn't pretty much get out of the water, but yeah, we don't do a lot of neoprene. We do a lot of dry suits. So Josh is going to join us in dry suit one of these days. Absolutely. Yep. Well, perfect. Donnie, do you have any questions?
And I'm going to have to get off here. I got to get ready for my day.
Not a worry. Just go ahead and there's a button at the bottom that says present.
I've got slides.
All right, Donnie, what are you presenting today?
All right, first let's do head and spine injuries.
From the React Right program?
Yes. Donnie is a little different in that he's an upcoming student and has a little bit to get to dive guide, but he's an EMT paramedic. And so I've appreciated his information on this and helping me through things like React Right. And I thought it might be just kind of a special treat for us to do let him do the presentation on that, because it's kind of his ballywick, if you will.
And to be clear, I'm not a paramedic.
Oh, sorry.
But
I honestly don't know what the difference between the two is, to be truthful.
Just level of training. If you're a paramedic, you get an associate's degree generally.
Oh, okay. EMT then, sorry.
All right. I didn't have enough time to figure out how to design my slides exactly like you guys did, where it's all cohesive and looks good and has like the SSI symbols. But I threw something together last night. We'll see if it's any good. Can they hear me just fine on your mic?
Can you guys hear Donnie? Okay, I'm getting a lot of heads up.
Okay. Like that. That works.
Just make sure you speak loudly.
You bet. All right. Today I will be covering head and spinal injuries from the React Right course. Let's see. Our goal today, what we'll be learning, is how to recognize and stabilize a victim suspected of a head or spinal injury. Who here has hit their head? Everybody? Yeah. I think between the great ages of 2 to 4 and then the rest of our lives bumping into stuff, we do a pretty good job of hitting our head. Has anyone here been so unfortunate as to maybe get like a really bad head injury, a concussion, anything like that?
No.
All right, Ben, what was it like having a concussion?
Disorienting.
Absolutely. Your head and your brain are probably the most important aspect of your ability to coordinate your movements and just live life in general. So, I mean, as far as injuries to your head and spine, like they get pretty serious. It's not bringing up my notes like I wanted it to, but that's all right. Let's see if I can piggyback off. No, I don't think I can. All right. So our objectives today, and I added a couple just to make this a little bit more clear. Let's see. By the end of this class, I'd like everyone to be able to demonstrate the proper techniques for dealing with suspected head and spinal injuries, how to recognize potential head and spinal injuries, what specific potential threats may put divers at risk for head and spinal injuries, and what complications and results may come about due to head and spinal injuries. Why do you think this is important, Josh?
I mean, it's very important. You need to protect your head because obviously your brain is in there, and you kind of need to know how to identify if you've injured yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this is important because head injuries can typically result in death, paralysis, and some pretty crazy stuff. So if we can properly get through this course, hopefully you'll be able to prevent further injury of someone else or maybe even yourself. All right. As far as recognizing head injuries, the first thing we look at as very new medical providers, right? This is kind of like your EMR level stuff. Is what caused the injury. If you know what caused the injury or the mechanism of injury, it can give you a pretty good idea of what the body is going through, right? So there's a couple of things that can be specific to head injuries that, like, if you've gone through it, like you probably have some form of like internal trauma, right? So like blunt force trauma specifically, I'm thinking like the kind of thing that you'd see if like you ascended too fast, bumped your head, If you're in an overhead environment, if someone comes up and they've been in that kind of environment, you might immediately suspect a head injury right off the bat. We're also around a lot of heavy equipment, right? Tanks, boats, stuff like that. I mean, collisions aren't exactly something that's not common, right? So like if you know that someone's been whacked by something pretty good and heavy, like you can pretty much bet that they're going to have at least some injury to the brain. I have some signs and symptoms here that can also lead you to believe that there'll be some head injury. And I'll explain some of this a little bit better for you. Bleeding and bruising. Good thing about head injuries is that it's really easy to tell if you have a head injury because you're going to bleed, and you're going to bleed a lot. The scalp and the face, like, they're very vascular areas. So if someone's even had some mild amount of trauma, it's going to present physically on the exterior of their cranium, their spine, their neck, all that. They're also going to have that altered level of consciousness. Like Ben here was talking about how disoriented he felt. That can go all the way through to the point of being completely unconscious and non-reactive to anything, depending on the extent of the injury. The next one I've got here is something that medical providers use quite a bit. When you're examining a patient, we use the acronym DCAT-BTLS to describe the different types of injuries that you might be looking for, right? So the D stands for dense, right? So like as you're looking at your patient, like, is there a deformity, like an actual dent in their head, right? I'm sorry, are you clicking through it, Ben?
Accidentally, sorry.
Sorry, it's okay. See, we've got cuts, so those lacerations, right? And then and it goes through. Let's see if I can remember it all. It's been a while since I've had to teach it. P is punctures, B is burns, right? But that can also be broken teeth. I mean, if you have a broken tooth, maybe you got whacked in the face, like that tooth can now become a choking hazard. Let's see. Tears, lacerations, swelling. Swelling can be super important there. If someone's had some blunt force trauma, they're definitely going to have some swelling alongside any bleeding that they'll have there. Or they might not have that bruising or bleeding at all, and it's just the swelling, right? Let's see. Something else you can do is you can look at their pupils. They'll be uneven, or we call them blown, just super dilated. That can be a pretty good indicator that that your patient isn't exactly their brain isn't functioning correctly. So they don't just have head trauma, but they have like some interior damage that's going to cause them to not be able to think or perform or even really function at all. Another thing that happens, especially if you have bleeding in the brain, is extremely high blood pressure. Whether you can take a blood pressure or not, we can go into a further explanation of how you might be able to do that off the cuff. But of course, there's other courses, both local medical courses that this course is not designed to replace or supplement in any way, that you can take to further your knowledge on how to track down your vital signs like blood pressure and other things that might help you better take care of a patient. Let's see. Does anyone have any questions regarding what might constitute something that would lead you to believe that there's a head injury? All right, no questions? All right, there's no questions for me, I've got some questions for you. I think if I can come up with one, right? Let's see. Josh, if someone has a head injury, what do you expect to see?
Dizziness. I mean, you might look for the pupils. You might look for the broken teeth, like you mentioned. I mean, there could be a lot of signs.
Awesome. All right. Next, threats specific to divers, right? So like we undergo and perform acts that most people don't, or at least most people who don't dive don't. We can be underneath things. We can be in caves, under ice, or even simply just under a boat or another diver, right? Something like that can put you at risk, especially where sometimes a rapid ascent is either necessary or accidental, right? And then collisions might not just be because there's boat traffic or because you're ascending quickly, but because maybe you're in a strong current. Maybe you're in a river and you get in a position where you're dragged and get thrown against something, it's not always obvious at the surface either what constitutes a collision. I mean, I was diving in Catalina not too long ago, and the waves were pushing us towards this rocky cliff face. And I mean, had we gotten too close, you would have been bashed against that surface. And that's definitely something that might not be obvious to someone pulling you out of the water unless they were right there watching you. There's a lot of complications that can go with head injuries. I don't want you guys to have to focus on all of these too much. But I mean, at the end of the day, the reason why we're learning this is because like a lot of these things can result in death, paralysis, further injury. Let's see. Ben, did you experience any like severe complications with your concussions?
No.
Nothing that might. All right. Let's see. Has anyone here witnessed a crazy bad head injury maybe, or been diving with someone who whacked their head pretty good?
I actually have. When my son was 2, he was a bit of a daredevil, and we had pulled the boat back after being at the lake that day, and he was actually climbing on the back of the trailer and on the back of his boat, the back of the boat, and his bigger sister was like, Dawson, get down, you're not supposed to be up there. And I guess maybe she was trying to grab him, and he pulled away, and he fell off the back and actually hit his head. Now there was no blood or anything, but because it was a fall, I went ahead and took him to the emergency room, and sure enough, he had a hairline fracture on his skull. And so it just made me realize, number one, that you can't ever turn your back on that child, but also how dangerous it can be. He actually stayed in the hospital overnight since he was so young, and he was fine, but it was kind of a scary situation.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that he's all right, because I mean, you can have some pretty severe complications with those hairline fractures, even as simple as just some viral infection that got in there. So, I mean, as far as luck goes, I'm glad he's all right.
Me too.
All right. So things that you can do, right? So like this is our bread and butter when it comes to what we're actually talking about as far as dive medicine. The biggest thing is that you need to transport that patient to a hospital. You're not going to know whether they have a hairline fracture or some more serious injury unless you've gotten to a higher level of care. This is the point where I had planned on being at the shop and taking out one of our dummies and showing you exactly what stable inline like motion restriction of like the head should look like. The gist of it is that you're going to place yourself above the patient, right, as they're lying down supine, and use your hands to cradle the head. You can also use your knees a little bit on either side of the head to make sure that it doesn't roll. The idea is that you want to control everything along the spine to the head. So all 7 cervical vertebrae and the head. You don't want to twist or move or anything like that. And it should be in the exact same position that everyone's looking at me now. Straight eyes forward, straight ahead, not turning your head or anything like that. If you have backboards, straps, seat collars, you can use those to restrict motion. Another thing there, if your patient's conscious and awake, just having them physically do it themselves, like, hey man, like just sit there and try to keep your head as still as possible. Conscious patients are going to avoid pain better than you can. So, I mean, they're going to place their head exactly where it needs to be to avoid further injury. Sometimes you might have to move a patient that's not exactly strapped to a board. There's some risk to life other than just a head injury. You got to get them out of the water, all this stuff. If you're dragging or moving that patient, if you can do that in line with the patient's spine, so like dragging them like head or feet first, something along those lines, while maintaining hopefully that head a little bit. Whether you use their shirt to cradle their neck as you like pull them by their arms forward, you can really restrict the motion of that spine while still moving your patient and try to mitigate further injury. I read through the coursework a little bit, and it talked a little bit about taking helmets off. All right. So, I mean, we're not around cave divers a lot, but I wasn't so comfortable teaching that at this level because at least at the emergency responder level in the past, we've taught people who don't have medical training to leave helmets on. I mean, you have a patient who may have some pretty serious injuries to their skull, especially if you can see it. Leaving that helmet on, like it's like a cast. It's already there. There's not a heck of a lot that you can do better than that helmet is already doing. So as far as like for the purposes of my instruction, like I feel comfortable with telling people leave that helmet on. If you do find any of those like or are looking for any like dense deviations in the skull, don't push too hard. Use the pads of your fingers. Be very gentle. You don't want to further injure that patient. Patients with severe head injuries, they're not going to be able to maintain their airway. They're going to have a really hard time breathing. You might hear them snoring. That's the lack of that muscle control, right? They're going into that decreased level of consciousness. Just pulling their jaw forward with your hands while maintaining spinal motion restriction with your knees on either side of their head can keep that tongue forward. Is it buffering on that end too?
Yep, keep going.
Okay, sweet.
They should be able to hear you at least. There you go.
All right.
Yes.
Pulling that jaw forward with your hands can move that tongue out of the way and open that airway and keep that person from suffocating while they've got that severe head injury. If they're bleeding from a head wound, it typically isn't too serious. You can try to staunch it gently, but like don't wrap anything too tightly around the head. Keep wounds clean. The infection risk with head injuries, especially if you've broken through the skull, is extremely high. There's some pretty serious viral infections out there, encephalitis, meningitis, that can really mess someone up. So if you can keep someone clean, even though maybe they've been in the water and it's too late, like do what you can. Flush the wound with clean water, distilled water if possible, and saline if you got it. Next, there's a couple different types of shocks that you can go into with head injuries. Some simply because you got whacked and there's some nerve damage. That can typically result in like severe vessel dilation, of drop in blood pressure across the whole body. So controlling the temperature of your patient can definitely make sure that they don't further de-escalate down that pathway of shock and not being able to perfuse blood across all their tissues adequately. Another thing is just blood loss. If they lose too much volume, that can send them into shock as well. And the more you can do to support your patient by keeping them warm, keeping them dry, keeping them in their supine position so it's easier for their body to do the work of pumping blood throughout, the better result you're going to have for that patient. And then we have a term, it's called treating with diesel. The faster you can get someone with a severe head injury to the hospital, so by burning that diesel, because most ambulances are diesel, the better chances they have of coming through it just fine with no issues. If they do lose a pulse, the threat now becomes the fact that they don't have their heart beating. So at that point, you're going to need to do CPR before you need to worry about the actual spinal motion restriction. If you have more than one person with you, you can do both, and that would be preferable. But in a lot of situations, it's just you and your dive buddy, maybe one other person, someone's running to get help, driving the boat. If that's the case, CPR takes precedence. And then monitor your victim all the time. Really, you can't monitor your victim too often with something super severe. If this is just like your typical concussion, nausea, vomiting, stuff like that, that would lead you to believe that they have some head injury. Still, like stick with them every like 5 minutes, make sure they're all right. The curriculum used to say, like, don't let the patient fall asleep. For that first 2 hours, yeah, don't let that patient fall asleep. After that, if they do, that's just their brain trying to heal itself. As long as you keep monitoring their pulse and breathing and they don't lose either of those, they can sleep after a couple hours. All right. That covers most of our treatment there. There's some things we can do to prepare, right? The best thing that we can do before even getting in the situation is make sure it doesn't happen at all. We have some great tools at our disposal here, whether it be first aid kits and such that you can get through the dive shop, or simple like PPE helmets and proper planning where you just aren't going to be in an overhead environment, or you plan on making sure that you know what's above you or avoiding it altogether. Things like that can keep you from getting in this position in the first place. SSI offers some awesome courses on some of this stuff, right? On ice diving, on how to prepare for overhead environments, cave diving, stuff like that. I mean, The more you can get out here with us, the more comfortable you can get with diving, the less chance you're going to have an injury. Let's see. I think everyone here has taken some pretty high level SSI courses. Janine, have you taken any overhead courses?
I actually have. I loved doing full cave. That was a great course.
Absolutely. Did you learn anything there that kind of applies to the head injuries? Did they just stick with, did they have some good reasons for the helmets?
Well, yes. So when you're wearing that helmet, if you're unable to see, maybe your flashlight burns out, or maybe there's just a lot of debris in the water. One of the great things that you do is use one hand to stay in contact with the line, but the other hand you wave kind of in front and above your head to prevent you from hitting your head. So we learned how to do that.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to know that they keep repeating it as you go up, especially in a cave. Let's see. Josh, you've taken some courses with us. Have you ever bumped into anything?
I mean, not with my head, but yeah, I mean, it gets pretty murky in some of the places we dive in. You for sure run into it. So.
I think it wasn't too long. Me and Ben here were up at Ryrie, and I think I surfaced just a couple feet away from one of the docks, and I hadn't quite thought about that on the way up, and I was a little bit lucky, I think, not to have hit my head there. I think Ben was still down trying to figure out where I went at that point. All right. Of course, always dive safely. Stick to your plan. Know your site, right? If this is your first time diving, maybe have someone show you around. Let you know where you might hit your head, dive with your buddy. Don't get too lost, Then you can prevent a lot of stuff just by sticking within range. Especially when it comes to injuries, it's good to have someone around who at least can observe what happened to you and know exactly how to care for you. And then, of course, there's good dive insurance, whether through other sources or Dan. I know it's definitely on the SSI app. If you want to look on there, it goes through a whole section about dive insurance that can keep you safe even after you can't do it yourself. All right. And then, of course, just like always, clean up after yourself, minimize your impact on the environment. And when it comes to medicine, you can clean up a little bit, but a lot of times we get really focused on the patient, right? So, whether you're focused on the patient and might knock something into the water and forget all about it, or maybe just rush by some stuff and kick everything up trying to make it work. You can always see what you can do to minimize your impact. At the end of the day, the patient comes first in my head, but that's not always the case in some super sensitive environments. I don't know if David's still with us, but if he was in an aquarium or doing some ecological work, he might have some pretty delicate stuff that he'd want to save before the buddy next to him. All right. And I think in the SSI app also, it talks about wildlife. So knowing exactly what your dive site, what's at your dive site and how to keep it safe would be something to know for your dive. All right. Hopefully after this course, you guys can all recognize and stabilize a victim's suspect of a head and spinal injury. Of course, I would have liked to get some hands-on a lot of this stuff, but I hope maybe in the future we'll be able to get together and practice it for real. All right. Our goals today were to demonstrate proper techniques for dealing with suspected head injuries, to recognize potential head injuries, to recognize specific potential threats for divers for head injuries, and to list potential complications. Let's see. Ben, do you remember why this was all important?
Absolutely. Understanding how to avoid head injuries for ourselves and what the implications of that would be, as well as potentially understanding how, if there was a dive accident, how we might recognize and treat and assist in a head injury with our dive buddy or somebody else.
Absolutely. Thank you for paying attention. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and end it there. I'd love to ask more questions, but to be honest, I don't think I'm prepared enough or have everything together or have enough experience teaching courses to be able to pull that off right now. So I'll just let you guys beat me in the after action, and we'll do this again.
Josh, how do you do?
Yeah, I thought he did good.
Excellent. Janine, I look forward to your comments on this one.
Easy pass. Very, very good and very thorough. Whenever I can early on in the presentation just start ticking your points off and giving you credit for different areas, it's a good sign that it's going to be a good presentation. The introduction and the summary were both good. I especially liked how you used Benjamin to explain the value, to restate the value. That evaluated his knowledge, but then you weren't just reading a PowerPoint presentation saying the value of this is, you actually brought him into that conversation. So I really enjoyed that. So I did not really see any equipment sales other than you said helmet. It's hard when we are talking about the React Right class to pull in scuba equipment, because this class can be taught to anyone. It doesn't have to be a diver. So that one was a bit hard on what you could sell. But that being said, more than likely your dive center has some type of a first aid kit or something like that you could bring in and say, let me show you how to have a proper first aid kit and what we should include in that first aid kit. And it's so important that everyone has a first aid kit, because we never know when we might need to use it. So I think that you could have maybe worked on that one little point a little bit better. And I did take off a point for inaccurate information, because you said a couple of times that all head injuries will have bleeding or bruising. And that's not actually the case. The bruising may not show up right away. You may have a bump or, a swelling and not bleeding. So I just took off one point because that wasn't quite accurate information. Otherwise it was, in my opinion, a really good presentation that was almost perfect. Like I said, I had to really, debate taking points off here or there. And sometimes I'll take a point off as more of a teaching, point more than a scoring point. But in the beginning, I would, with your opening statement and everything, I would just give objective, value, main points, and don't start teaching quite yet. I would hold off on that until further into the body of it, but excellent presentation. Very, very good. Benjamin
Absolutely.
warned me that you were going to be good. He told me in advance.
I try. I don't know if I did it justice today, to be honest, but I tried to capture everything. And it wasn't my intent to actually communicate that all head injuries cause like bleeding or bruising. So I'll work on my wording a little bit better, and we'll get this refined. Thank you so much.
Well, and I love that you would have brought in the mannequin or the dummy, because that would have really made it an active learning presentation, because then you could have gotten everybody on the ground and said, gather around. This is how we're going to support the head. This is how we're going to put the backboard under them without rolling them over, right? And so I definitely gave you credit for that. And I also loved that you asked us for our own personal experiences. People love to talk about themselves, and it makes it more relevant when you ask for personal life experiences. So I thought that was really, really nice.
Absolutely. I'll keep doing that.
No, you did a great job. Don does an amazing job, and I've always been impressed. I hit you on equipment because there was no equipment, but this is a tough one to sell equipment for as well. Absolutely. So, certainly a personal first aid kit of some kind, something along those lines. But unfortunately, our shop does not actually sell first aid kits. Right. So it definitely gets tough. And I'm torn whether to give you a 0 in that or a 2, because there was not, but it's also a really tough one as well. The other one I hit you on a point on Con Ed, because while we talked briefly about additional courses, BLS courses in the community, we didn't talk about what this, and typically we do teach this in conjunction with stress and rescue. But it certainly wouldn't be a bad idea. We for continuing education for safe diving, going through a good stress and rescue course or retaking the stress and rescue course with us is definitely to your advantage to help understand how to avoid these situations. Or if you're interested in cavern or something like that, we don't teach cavern or cave full overhead in our location. But maybe an advanced rec, we do teach that. How do you traverse this safely? An advanced rec might be interesting to you, so you understand how to do that safely through the course. And since we're talking about medical, are you a little older? I am a little older. I'm over 50. So when we start looking at that, hey, have you ever thought about side mount diving? The implications of reduced pressure on your back are immense when you start talking about that, or the safety implications of having a pony bottle or taking a solo course, things like that. So I think there's some opportunities. I mean, I agree they're a stretch, but at least it gives you the idea that, hey, our dive shop isn't just a one-trick pony. And I think that's kind of one of the ideas is the retention cycle. Anytime we teach a class, our idea is the retention cycle of how do we retain that customer. And that's why we bring in Con Ed or equipment, because if we can get them back in for the equipment, then we can get them back in for another class. We can get them onto another dive or to a dive trip. And it gives us the opportunity to kind of hit those 3 areas, trips, equipment, or classes, to keep them diving, keep them engaged. The hardest part we have with any diver is keeping them engaged, right? We honestly, we probably have a 20 to 30% retention engagement rate with our classes. A lot of people come through to take a course because they want to go to warm water, like Petra in our last class. She wanted to just she was going on a trip to Catalina. Her dad took it with her just for something fun to do. He had no dive plans. But how do we keep them engaged? Bruce, we probably won't keep engaged, right? He probably won't continue, but we can keep trying. I don't have a 3-prong. There's one over here. If it's,
I'm just gonna die.
I just don't have any 3 prongs in here. That's gonna be the bigger problem because I don't have a 3-prong in here.
That's okay. I'll figure it out.
So, but anyway, so that would be the overall goal. And you can just look up my screen. That's fine. I'm not gonna make you do another presentation. We're starting to run a little bingo on time for church and everything. So, but other than that, I think you did an amazing job. It was a stretch to find things to improve upon. I think every presentation when we grade you has to start off with with what you did right. To encourage you. My dad used to call it the Oreo cookie. Nice hat, you suck, nice shoes, right? We always start off with something positive. We find the area for improvement, and then we find another way to reiterate that you did a good job on something. So you're gaining appreciation that we do care. You're learning something, and we close it off with we care, right? If we can do it with those 3 things, I think we always have a win. So I scored you very high on this. And so good job. And I also wanted to reiterate, I like that you brought in dive insurance as well. I mean, I think it's something that is extremely underrated. We don't talk about adding Dan insurance, and I'm probably a little bit better on that than most because I know Dan Orr really, really well. Jim Gunderson as well is a close friend of mine as well, and he's former big deal at Dan as well. So because some of my friends are former executives at Dan, I think I'm a little bit better than most because I hear that message from them a lot. But I think it's an underrated message that we need to do that. And I hate to say it, this is one of the areas I disagreed with Janine. I liked that you brought in questions initially to get me thinking about the presentation. I really liked that. It's something, we get it. Here's our objective. What do you think would be the value and pull the value out of me initially? I liked that. I thought that was kind of it's a light disagree. I understand exactly where you're coming from on that, Janine, but I thought that was kind of a nice place to bring that in. What do you think the value and get that into active engagement immediately? because I think a lot of times we get to the droning on and Bueller, you know, and if the sooner we get our students thinking, the better off we are, the more engaged, and the more excited they are. So that was the only place I disagree with Janine, but it's a minor disagreement. It's you know, it's certainly it's aesthetic only. So I think we did a great job.
Well, and Benjamin, typically my candidates are, I'm trying to prepare them for the IE, and so sometimes there's a bit of a difference between scoring well at an IE and actually teaching these presentations in real life. Most definitely in real life, we want to get those students engaged immediately upon arrival. So I definitely agree with you on that. In preparing for the IE, I don't know about you, Benjamin, but sometimes whenever I'm listening and answering all at the same time, while trying to score, it's it's a bit of an overload, right, on our senses. And so I think because I'm typically preparing them to score really well at the IE, I'm almost teaching them how to get that evaluator's attention. So the evaluator is listening for those objectives right off, and they're listening to see, are they measurable? Is it telling me what I'm going to learn and when I'm going to learn it? And then did they tell me why I need to listen? What is the value? And did they give me a brief overview of what I'm going to, learn in the main points? And so, and I'm always very, very clear and open. If you want to score well during your evaluation, this is how you can get those points. This is an easy win for you on how to get those points. In real life, we're not always going to have a PowerPoint presentation. We might be out on the dock with the gear in front of us, or in React Right, we're going to be having the mannequin or the dummy, and we're going to have the first aid kit. And so it's a little different in real life, but just so you know, any one of these wonderful gentlemen that you brought to us today would have passed the instructor evaluation. So if any of them are thinking about moving forward and becoming an instructor, you've got this one down. You're all going to do amazing on these presentations. So very good job, and good job to you, Benjamin, training them.
Thank you. I think they've been amazing candidates, and they've definitely made me look better than I probably am, and done a fantastic job. So I'm very pleased with where they're going and where they're at, and I think I've been very, very clear on where they're at in the process and what I need from them to increase. I think Josh, I think he feels pretty clear on what I think needs to happen next for you to make that next step. But in terms of that next step, the presentation portion of it, understanding the presentation, is not one of the steps that I'm worried about with you at all. At this point, the only thing we're working on with you is dive form and dive comfort. Those are the two things that we're working on. I think I've been extremely clear on that and mentored you. Do you feel that, or do you have any questions about where we need to go with you?
Yeah, no, I think you've done a good job.
Okay, Donnie, how about you? I think they'll same thing. Dive form and dive comfort are the only areas that the presentation ability, react right. I think we've said this more than once. I need to get you to AI so you can teach all my React Right courses,
Right?
Because I think you'll do a better job than me. I don't feel nearly as comfortable as you present yourself in React Right. So I think you do a great job, and I'm excited to get you to AI so you can teach all my React Right courses. I don't have to anymore, because I think you'll do a better job. Honestly, I understand my strengths and I understand my weaknesses, and I'm okay with that. So, perfect. Janine, what else do you have? I think we score as we kind of went through this. We talked about the same things. I feel like we've scored pretty similar on this. Do you have any?
I think so as well. I was just going to say on their diving technique and form, as just kind of an added perk for all of my professional candidates, I throw in some extra stuff that isn't necessarily required. So I pull in a lot of information from that extended range foundations course. in
Yeah.
gear configuration. Let's teach our professionals how to set up gear, but more importantly, why we set it up the way we do, and how to personalize it for ourselves. Because if they're not comfortable with their gear, or their, like their BCD regulator set, any of it, sometimes that affects our performance in the water. And those finning techniques, we do a skill circuit, and the first thing my professionals do is, deploy those SMBs underwater, and we put it on either side of a line, and then I usually go ahead and tie the line, because they may not have experience doing that, but I'll put a double ender or a line marker on that line, and this is your space. This is your place that I need for you to stay during this section of it, and we'll go over our skills there, and that helps them work on buoyancy because they have a visual reference to see if they're really controlling their buoyancy, and it puts them in that uncomfortable situation where they have to stay still. Because if there's a line in front of them and they're moving their fins, now they're too close to the line. They may not know how to back fin yet. So how do we get back without doing this number? And as a dive professional, they need to have that proximity, the ability to stay close to their students. So that is just one thing that I do with my dive professionals to help them get more comfortable in the water, but to work on their finning techniques, which are so important. So you may be able to steal that idea, and if not, that's fine too. We don't do it on, we don't do twin sets or side mount at that point. We're just trying to help them perfect their in water skills while helping or assisting with a dive student. Because it, like we mentioned the other day, it's so nice to have an assistant instructor in the water with you. Takes a lot of that stress off of us, but also makes for a safer environment for our entire class. So, yep, Donnie, you need to get up to that assistant instructor level.
On the way.
We're working on it.
Very
Perfect.
good.
Janine, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. I think you've all done an amazing job, and I'm extremely excited. And this is some of my sampling. I didn't go out and just specifically say, hey, I'm just going to pick my best candidates. I just picked 3 of my candidates. This is what what we really work for, and we put them in the water. And Josh will tell you, we're working very diligently on frog kick with him and getting him dialed in with that, and getting him comfortable with that. And he's coming a long way. I'm very proud of where he's at, considering how fresh he is into the process. So Donnie's coming right along. We've been working with XR directly with Donnie because he's very excited to move to twin sets and side mount. And I think you've got your side mount right now, don't you?
It's in the shop. I gotta go pick it up.
Okay. That's the only thing I didn't pick up for you. I should have grabbed that. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I gotta pay the guy too.
Oh, okay. There we go. So, well, if you do the cement, you get a free. Yeah,
I know. I'm trying to find good forms, or I'll make some out of plywood for you.
So he's good. I told him I'd buy him a K2 if he did some cement work for me. So
Nice.
whatever it takes, we'll get him there. So cool.
Yep.
All right. That's okay. We'll end the session here if that's okay with you, Janine.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. And then we'll talk either later today or tomorrow if that's okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Guys, thank you. You guys have done amazing. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you.